Chapter 219. The next morning, Yen woke up slightly later than usual. Last night, she kept thinking about things and couldn't fall asleep. She only fell asleep in the middle of the night. When she woke up, it was already late in the morning. It wasn't snowing today, so the sun was out. After washing up, she went to the main room to eat. As soon as she walked in, she almost bit her tongue. "Why are you here?" Yen asked. Someone was sitting at the table in the main room, drinking tea. Qing Mei stood at the side. When she saw Yen, she answered anxiously, "His Excellency came over early in the morning. He told me not to wake you up and to wait here for you to wake up." Xiao Ju put down the teacup in her hand. She glanced at her and asked, "Did you sleep well?" "It was okay." Yen scratched her head. She felt that Xiao Ju's sudden appearance was very shocking. She subconsciously looked at the roof. This was her house, not the Liang province guards. Qing Mei put the porridge and dishes on the table. Yen looked and said in surprise, "Qing Mei, did you get rich? So much food? These seem to be snacks from Qin Xiangji, right? His Excellency sent someone to deliver these." Qing Mei answered uneasily. Originally, the He family ate simple breakfast. It had been more than 10 years, so no one felt that there was anything wrong with it. Today, Xiao Ju sent someone to deliver such a large table of food. Qing Mei felt embarrassed and wondered if her family was too shabby. Yen didn't feel anything. It wasn't the first time she took advantage of Xiao Ju. She immediately applauded and praised, "Xiao Ju, you're so considerate. No wonder Yen Nongguang always said that having a wife is good. You're even better than Princess Shang. I can't find a single flaw." Qi Wu, who was standing in the corner, trembled when he heard this. Was this something a human would say? That was a little too shameless. It was a pity that their young master was bewitched to the point of confusion, but he actually looked quite happy. "Have you eaten?" Yen gave Xiao Ju a pair of chopsticks. "Let's eat together." Xiao Ju took the chopsticks. Qi Wu. She finally knew why her master had left the Xiao Manor without eating breakfast. She had woken up so early to freeload her own food. He was really bored out of his mind. Usually, the He family didn't discriminate between master and servant. Qing Mei also ate together at the same table. But today, Xiao Ju was here. Qing Mei wouldn't come to the table even if she was beaten to death. After hesitating for a while, she dragged Qi Wu away and said that she wanted to sweep the snow. Yen had no choice but to eat with Xiao Ju. Qing Mei's porridge was fragrant and soft. She had added red dates, so it was sweet. Yen remembered that this person didn't seem to like sweet things when she grew up. He asked, "I forgot that you don't like sweet things." She reached out her chopsticks and took the red dates from Xiao Ju's bowl. She smiled and said, "I'll help you." Xiao Ju paused. Xiao family members knew that he was very particular about cleanliness. He didn't like to use things that others had used, let alone pick food from his bowl. Even Xiao Jing couldn't do it. But Yen did this, so he didn't stop her. "But, you didn't come here today just to eat breakfast with me, right?" Yen asked, "What's the matter?" "I plan to go to the Xianchang dojo." Xiao Ju said, "You'll come with me." Yen was stunned. "Why are we going to the Xianchang dojo?" "Since you want to expose He Rufei's identity, you need evidence. The Xianchang dojo still has your past essays and scrolls. Maybe they can be of use." "How is that possible?" Yen asked curiously. "Those are things from many years ago. How can the Xianchang dojo still keep them?" Xiao Ju pulled the corners of her mouth and looked at her with a mischievous smile. "Don't you know? General Fei Hong and General Fengyun's calligraphy has been kept in the dojo until today. Every year, when new students come to the spring enrollment, everyone has to look at it." Yen almost choked on his own words. "Are you serious? My calligraphy?" Heaven and earth, Xiao Ju was fine, but her calligraphy back then could not be considered very beautiful. Her handwriting was like a dog's crawl, but it was an exam paper that was always last place. What was there to look at? Over and over again, wasn't it insulting? Who would have thought that the last place in the Xianchang dojo would one day be on par with the first place and become the dojo's signboard? Sure enough, don't bully the young for being poor. Every dog has its day. I actually don't really want to go, Xiao Ju said. Oh? He Yan made a sad face. Okay, I'll go. After the meal, He Yan and Xiao Ju went out together. He didn't feel this way when he was in the Liang province guards. But once he returned to the capital and put on Lady He's dress, he felt uncomfortable all over. It wasn't because of anything else. It was because Lady He's dress was too exquisite and complicated. He Yan decided to simplify the complicated dress and put away all the straps. It was more convenient to go out. There was no carriage at the door. He Yan paused and asked the person beside him, Xiao Ju, where's the carriage? The weather is good today. Let's go, he said. It was a rare sunny day. The snow from last night hadn't melted, and the ground was glowing with golden warmth. When they walked under the sun, they felt that the haze of the past few days had been swept away. Their bodies felt warm from head to toe. He Yan closed his eyes comfortably and said, it would be great if it was this warm every day. Xiao Ju turned her head and glanced at him. The young girl had a bright smile. A little sunlight was enough to make her happy. It was hard to imagine that the brave and fierce General Fei Hong on the battlefield was this silly person in front of him. The corners of his mouth curved slightly, and he restrained the smile in his eyes. The two of them walked side by side on the street. Even though He Yan wasn't very famous, Xiao Ju's face wasn't unfamiliar. People recognized him from afar. Although they didn't dare to approach him, they still pointed and discussed in secret. Isn't that General Feng Yun, military governor Xiao? Who's the girl beside him? I don't think I've seen her before. When did military governor Xiao walk side by side with a girl in the daytime? She must be the fiancée that His Majesty has bestowed upon him. Fiancée? Are you talking about the Marquis He Yan? That's right, that's right. So Marquis Wuan looks like this. She looks so soft and weak. How did she get on the battlefield? He Yan's hearing was outstanding. He accidentally heard the discussions around him. He Yan looked at the man walking beside him. His expression was calm and indifferent. He Yan inexplicably felt that he had been brought out by Xiao Ju to show his face, so that people would know that Xiao Ju's fiancé, Marquis Wuan, looked like this. Forget it, she said to herself in her heart. If they want to see, then let them see. In the past, when she wore a mask, she had to hide. Now that she was openly using this face, even if there were people who wanted to substitute her, it would be impossible. Along the way, they were surrounded by people. After walking for a long time, the two of them finally arrived at the entrance of the Xianchang Pavilion. Years had passed since they parted, but the Xianchang Pavilion still looked the same as before. The mottled door, the familiar plaque, and the apricot tree at the entrance bent under the weight of the snow. He Yan looked and felt a little emotional. Her days in the Xianchang Pavilion were not very relaxing. Now that she thought about it, it was full of happy memories. The teachers here taught her to be reasonable and righteous. Otherwise, a girl who couldn't distinguish right from wrong and disguised as a man, even if she was a chess piece of the He family, would still be an ignorant chess piece that couldn't control her own fate. The most correct thing He Yuanxing had done in his life was to send her to the Virtuous Prosperity Dojo, which changed her life. Let's go, Xiao Ju said. The two of them walked in together. As soon as they walked into the courtyard, they heard the sound of students reading in the academy. The way of the university is to be virtuous, to be close to the people, and to stop doing good deeds. After so many years, you're still memorizing this. He Yan suddenly recalled the memories of improving together with Lin Shuanghe. It's strange. At that time, I couldn't memorize it no matter how hard I tried. Later, after I joined the army, I recited it every night when I had nothing to do in the camp. Then I memorized it. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. You memorized it in the camp? Of course, He Yan said proudly. In the beginning, before I met my master, my skills were not good, so I could only rely on my brain. You don't know, but in the Fuyue army, anyone who can read is very popular in the camp. They are good at both the pen and the sword. She began to praise herself again. Xiao Ju was about to say something when she suddenly heard someone's voice in front of them. Military Governor Xiao. The two of them looked in the direction of the voice and saw a middle-aged man wearing yellow hemp clothes quickly walking over. This man was very gentle and had an amiable appearance. When he walked in front of Xiao Ju and He Yan, he smiled and said, "Military Governor Xiao, why did you think of coming to the academy today?" He Yan was stunned. This was Huang Sankai, the teacher who taught mathematics in the Xianchang Academy. He Yan had also taught mathematics in the past. During He Yan's school life, because she was not outstanding in any aspect, it was very difficult for her to gain the teacher's favor. This Mr. Huang Sankai, perhaps because he was not very old at the time, was very gentle and amiable to his students. He did not treat his students differently because of their grades, and was very accommodating. It was also this teacher who used to praise He Yan in the academy. Diligent learning is like a sprout in spring. You don't see it growing, but it grows day by day. Look at He Rufei, you should all learn from him. Because of this, a group of youths were dissatisfied with He Yan. However, when he saw this Mr. Huang, He Yan still felt very close. "I was passing by here, so I came to take a look," Xiao Ju replied. Huang Senkai showed an expression of pride. "Please come in, please come in." Don't blame this teacher for showing a fawning expression. Xiao Ju was now Da Wei's famous General Feng Yun and the commander-in-chief of the Right Army. The reason why he did not get promoted was because even if he won the war, His Majesty did not have a higher position to promote him. Moreover, when he was in the Xianchang Academy, instead of saying that the teachers were teaching Xiao Ju, it was more accurate to say that Xiao Ju came to the Xianchang Academy to go through the motions. The teachers in the Xianchang Academy did not have anything to teach him. In order to avoid causing a commotion among the students, He Yan and Xiao Ju went to the teacher's room. The teachers rested in this spacious room during the day and only attended 3 classes a day. Today's class was literature, mathematics, and etiquette. Tomorrow's class was bow, horse, and saber. When He Yan and Xiao Ju walked in, there was no one else in the room. Huang Senkai first poured a cup of tea for the 2 of them and invited them to sit down. Then he got up and fiddled with the stove in the room. The stove in the room was warm, and a cup of hot tea was very comfortable. "I did not expect Military Governor Xiao to be here today." Huang Senkai smiled and looked at He Yan. "This is Mark Wu and Miss He?" He Yan quickly got up and bowed. He Yan greets teacher. She was bowing to the teacher as a student, but it gave Huang Senkai a fright. He quickly got up and bowed back. "Miss He is too polite. Please sit down." He Yan sat down. Huang Sankai smiled and said to He Yan, "When Military Governor Xiao was a teenager, he was very popular with girls. However, I have never seen him treat anyone differently. At that time, I was wondering what kind of woman his future wife would be. Now, that group of brats have all settled down and gotten married, but I don't see any movement from him. Now that the dust has settled, I can be at ease." "This Miss He," Huang Sankai said to He Yan, "is very different from ordinary girls. I have stayed in Shuojing for so many years and have seen countless girls. However, Miss He is the first one I have seen. Military Governor Zhao's eyes are really sharp." He Yan, Huang Sankai probably did not expect that the girl he was praising was a student that he had personally taught in the past. As they were talking, the door opened and someone came in. The 2 looked over at the same time and saw a thin old man wearing a brown robe and a high bun walk in. "Mr. Wei," Huang Sankai stood up and said to the old man, "Military Governor Xiao and his fiancée, Miss He, are here." Wei Xianzhang, the curator of the Xianchang Hall, looked at the 2. He Yan and Xiao Ju stood up and bowed to him. Wei Xianzhang was not as friendly as Huang Sankai. He only nodded slightly, walked to his desk, and sat down. He put down the book in his hand. He was the one who was in class just now. He Yan leaned closer to Xiao Ju and whispered, "Look, the person I am most afraid of is here." When He Yan was in school, he was most afraid of this Mr. Wei, Curator Wei. Wei Xianzhang was not a commoner. He had an official position. However, He Yan once thought that the reason why he founded the Xianchang Hall was because his personality was too unlikable. He was old-fashioned and strict. His colleagues in the officialdom did not like him, so they rushed him to be the curator of the school. Unlike Huang Sankai, who was gentle and amiable and never scolded students, Wei Xianzhang was excessively strict. As long as there were students with bad grades, they would always be punished by him. The students secretly called him Old Man Wei. As He Yan was the last in the Xianchang Hall, Wei Xianzhang naturally saw her as the shame of the Xianchang Hall. He Yan believed that if it wasn't for He Yuanxing persuading that Shi Bao and the fact that the Xianchang Hall didn't have the rule of driving out the accepted students, she would have been driven out by Wei Xianzhang on the first day she entered the Xianchang Hall. She would never be allowed to step into the school again. In short, in the memories of this gentleman, He Yan could only remember the unpleasant memories of being beaten, punished, scolded, and copying books. Even though she was no longer studying in the school and was not afraid of facing the Yuto, He Yan still felt a chill down her spine the moment she saw this old gentleman. "This is Miss He," Huang Sankai said with a smile. Wei Xianzhang picked up the tea on the table and took a sip. His scrutinizing gaze swept over He Yan's body and said with a straight face, "You are He Yan? How can a woman join the army to fight and show her face in public?" He Yan, ? She didn't study anymore, but this old man Wei still wanted to pick on her and find trouble with her. He Yan smiled and said, "It's just that the situation forced me to do so. Eating and living with a man is immoral and unorthodox. You don't know the rules at all. Xiao Huijin has always been clean and honest. How could he be coaxed into the hands of a woman like you?" He Yan, Huang Sankai wiped his sweat awkwardly. "Curator, Mr. Wei is too serious?" Xiao Ju said lightly, "Missy didn't coax me. I liked her first." Wei Xianzhang furrowed his brows and looked at Xiao Ju with even more disappointment. "A real man talks about love and love all day long. What's wrong with him?" He then glared fiercely at He Yan. "Femme fatale." He Yan's smile stiffened. After living for 2 lifetimes, this was the first time someone called her a femme fatale. She took it as a compliment. But the way old man Wei looked at her, it was as if she was the demoness who brought disaster to the country. Xiao Ju was the fatuous ruler of the country. Could it be that her last-place temperament had already seeped into her bones? Even if she changed her body, as long as Wei Xianzhang saw her, he would still dislike her from the bottom of his heart. "We came here today to ask for a favor." He Yan changed the topic. If she continued, she was afraid that old man Wei would use a long stick to chase them away. Huang Senkai asked, "What is it?" "We want to borrow the brush and ink that He Rufei left in the academy," Xiao Ju said. When she said this, Wei Xianzhang and Huang Senkai looked at her in surprise. "What does Military Governor Xiao want to borrow He Rufei's brush and ink for?" Huang Senkai asked. "It's me." He Yan laughed. "I've always heard that General Fei Hong is a great general who is as famous as the governor. My heart is filled with admiration. I also heard that they used to be classmates, so I wanted to see the traces of General Fei Hong's past." "Nonsense. Ridiculous." Wei Xianzhang slammed the table. His face was green with anger. He pointed at He Yan and said, "How can you be like this, like this?" He Yan guessed what he wanted to say and thoughtfully reminded him, "Zhao Qin, Mu Chu, Zhao Sin Mu Si?" Wei Xianzhang was furious. He turned and looked at Xiao Ju. "Xiao Huijin, this is the wife you chose." The corner of Xiao Ju's mouth twitched and she said, "It's nonsense. Sir, don't take it to heart. Please take a look at He Rufei's brush and ink first. He Rufei is a student of my Xianchang Academy." Wei Xianzhang flicked his sleeves and said, "He is also a famous general of Dawei. How can his brush and ink be seen by just anyone?" He Yan thought to himself. He didn't expect her to be so important in Wei Xuanzhang's heart. For a moment, he was touched and his resentment towards this old man disappeared. "I'm not asking as a student," Xiao Ju said calmly. "I'm asking as the governor of the Right Army." Huang Sankai shuddered. He knew that when this young master was in the Xianchang Academy, although he didn't seem to cause trouble, he was definitely not an obedient person. Most of the time, he was just too lazy to do it. Now that he was talking about his official position, the Xianchang Academy couldn't act rashly in front of the Right Army's governor for the time being. He pulled Wei Xianzhang and squeezed out a smile. "What are you saying? If Military Governor Xiao wants to see it, he can do so at any time. General He's brush and ink are stored in the study. The two of you, please follow me." Wei Xianzhang was furious. Huang Sankai, curator. Huang Sankai leaned closer to him and whispered, "That's Commander-in-Chief Xiao we're talking about. Besides, most of the students who attend the spring recruitment every year are here because of Commander-in-Chief Xiao and General He. If we offend Military Governor Xiao in the future, Military Governor Xiao will spread the word that everyone else will go to the Imperial College. What kind of talents will our Xianzhang Academy be able to recruit?" Wei Xianzhang didn't speak. He only knew how to teach and didn't know anything about politics or business. Ordinary chores were taken care of by Huang Sankai. At this moment, when he heard Huang Sansai's words, he knew that what he said was reasonable. In the end, he couldn't keep his face. He snorted and left in a huff. Mr. Wei is just a bit old-fashioned. He doesn't have any ill intentions. Huang Sankai didn't forget to rope in He Yen. "Miss He, please don't take it to heart." "I know." He Yen smiled and said, "I won't take it to heart." "That's good." Huang Sankai brought the two of them into the library of the Xianzhang Academy and left first. The library had a total of 3 floors. The topmost floor retained the brushes and ink left behind by the students in the past. In the past few years, the most famous people in the Xianzhang Academy were He Yen and Xiao Ju. Therefore, the scrolls, paintings they left behind were sealed on the same shelf. The top row was Xiao Ju's, and the bottom row was He Yan's. He Yen took out a stack of exam papers and casually took out one. It was mathematics, and a C was clearly drawn on it. The paper was full of mistakes. The moment He Yen saw it, she subconsciously hid the exam paper behind her back. Xiao Ju glanced at her and sneered, "It's not like you haven't seen it before. Why are you hiding it?" He Yen pursed her lips and thought for a while. Then she said, "I think it's unfair." Xiao Ju took out a book and casually flipped through it. "What's unfair?" "Think about it." He Yen answered seriously. "When you met me, I was at the lowest point of my life. I didn't know anything and I wasn't good at anything. What you saw was the worst version of me. When I went to the battlefield, I knew everything. You didn't see me at my best. But when I saw you, you were always so good." He Yen said, "Don't you think it's unfair?" Xiao Ju laughed. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly looked downstairs and her expression changed slightly. Someone came in. "It can't be." He Yen whispered, "Didn't Mr. Huang tell us to look for books ourselves? Why did he let other students in? If those students saw us, wouldn't it be lively again?" But soon she realized that this was not the case. The footsteps coming up the stairs obviously belonged to someone who knew martial arts. Xiao Ju and He Yen looked at each other and the two of them quickly hid behind another row of bookshelves. The distance between the bookshelves was very narrow. Only one person could pass through at a time. The two of them hid in the corner and had to face each other. Xiao Ju was very tall. He Yen raised his head slightly and almost touched her chin. As the two of them breathed in and out, they could almost hear each other's heartbeat. He Yan's palms couldn't help but sweat. He couldn't help but feel nervous. But this nervousness only lasted for a moment. Her gaze froze. The person who had sneaked up the stairs quickly rushed to the row of bookshelves that they were standing on. Then, he took out a flint and lit the row of bookshelves that He Yen was standing on. With a ting sound, the fire ignited. He Yen and Xiao Ju flew out. Chapter 220. The person who set the fire did not expect that there would be someone in the quiet library today. He was caught off guard and wanted to run, but Xiao Ju had already blocked his way. He was no match for her in martial arts. After exchanging one move, Xiao Ju dislocated his arm. He Yen had already grabbed a long blanket to put out the fire when Xiao Ju was exchanging blows with the person. Fortunately, the fire was not big. The person probably thought that the library was easy to set on fire, so he did not use ointment. Otherwise, the two of them might not have been able to put out the fire. The fire was put out in time, so only half of the books were burned. He Yen shook his head at Xiao Ju. Fortunately, nothing serious happened. The two of them looked at the person on the ground. He was young and wore a cotton shirt. At first glance, he looked like a student from the Xianzhang school. His arms and legs were dislocated by Xiao Ju, so he could not move for the time being. He Yen noticed that there were traces of martial arts training between his thumb and index finger. He could not help but frown. He doesn't look like a student from the Xianchang school. He must have snuck in. Ordinary students, even if there were martial arts courses in the school, would not have such thick calluses. It was obvious that they were caused by years of martial arts training. Xiao Ju looked down at him and asked coldly, "Who sent you?" The person only stared at Xiao Ju and did not speak. "Wait a minute." He Yen seemed to have sensed something. He stepped forward and grabbed the person's chin. Xiao Ju could not stop him. He Yen said, "He can't speak. He's a mute." The person was forced to open his mouth. His mouth was empty except for half of his tongue. "It's very dangerous." Xiao Ju pulled her up and pulled her behind. "Don't get too close." The other party found a mute and deliberately snuck into the Xianchang school just to set the library on fire. He Yan's attention was not on himself. He looked at Xiao Ju. "It seems that someone has the same idea as us." Although there were rare and unique books in the hidden book pavilion, it was not enough to make people take the risk. What's more, the other party didn't send people to steal, but to set fire. Coincidentally, the one that was set on fire was the one that He Rufei had used. Just like how He Yen and Xiao Ju came to the Xianchang mansion today to find He Rufei's past handwriting in case of an emergency, the real young master he also looked guilty and short of breath, which was why he couldn't wait to get someone to destroy the corpse. Xiao Ju asked, "What are your plans?" He Yen lowered his head and thought for a while. When he raised his head again, his expression had become relaxed. "Since someone covets General He's notes, why don't we keep them for them first? As for this person, let's inform Mr. Huang first and see what he has to say." When Huang Sankai received the news and came over, he couldn't believe his eyes. He had only let Xiao Ju and He Yen into the hidden book pavilion for less than a stick of incense's time. How could someone suddenly set fire to it? "Mr. Huang," Xiao Ju gestured to the person on the ground. "Is this person a student of the school?" Mr. Huang carefully looked at the face of the person who set the fire and shook his head. No, I've never seen this person before." "Then that's it," Xiao Ju nodded. "This person snuck into the school and just failed to set fire to it. I saw it." Mr. Huang hurriedly went to check the bookshelf that had just caught fire. The scattered test papers on the ground, the half-burnt book, and the smell of burnt wood in the pavilion all proved that Xiao Ju was not lying. Just now, someone did set fire to it. Why? Huang Senkai was at a loss. What enmity does this person have with our Xianchang school? Why did he set fire to the hidden book pavilion? Fortunately, it was the hidden book pavilion and not the school. But just now, if Xiao Ju and He Yen were not here, very few people would enter the hidden book pavilion. By the time the fire was discovered, it would be too late. Thinking of this, Huang Sansai's heart was filled with a layer of fear. "This person is mute," He Yen laughed. "He can't speak." Xiao Ju's voice was cold. "I'm afraid it has something to do with the Yuto." "Yuto?" Huang Senkai was shocked. "Why would the Yuto appear in Shuojing?" Xiao Ju calmly said, "This matter is confidential. I hope Mr. Huang can keep it a secret for me. Since it is the Yuto's conspiracy, it is better to beat them at their own game. Mr. Huang, please announce to the public that the hidden book pavilion caught fire and destroyed a shelf of books." Fortunately, the fire was put out in time and did not lead to a disaster. General Fei Hong's notes were all destroyed. This. Huang Sankai was still very puzzled. "This is related to the country." Xiao Ju's eyes were as sharp as lightning. "I hope Mr. Huang can consider the overall situation." Huang Sankai trembled. "Of course. But General He's notes? He and I are classmates. It is just some ordinary pen and ink. I will bring it back to Xiao family for safekeeping. In the future, when the real culprit behind the scenes is revealed, I will return it to you." Huang Sankai sensed something. He looked at the young man in front of him. The young man who was always lazy and indifferent had now shed his youthfulness. He was like an unsheathed sword, completely different from the past. He respectfully lowered his head and whispered, "It is all up to Military Governor Xiao. As for this person, I will take care of it." Mr. Huang only needs to announce to the public that someone was burned to death in the fire. Huang Sankai nodded in agreement. After Huang Sankai finished his task, Chi Wu came in and took away the mute who had set the fire. He also took away a whole sack of He Rufei's notes. He Yen and Xiao Ju walked out. As they walked, he said, "Xiao Ju, what happened just now, is it okay?" In the end, Huang Sankai was not a member of the Xiao family. He did not know how much he could keep secret for them. He Rufei was not a fool either. The people they sent out did not return. Even if Huang Sankai spread the news that the library was on fire, He Rufei might not believe it. "It's okay. Leave it to me," Xiao Ju replied. He Yen thought for a moment. "I think that Su Zhiheng is probably still looking for Mother Qin's whereabouts. We must ensure their safety." Xiao Ju smiled carelessly. "Don't worry. The Su family's hands cannot reach into the Xiao family." He Yen was slightly relieved. However, today's relaxed visit to the Xianchang Pavilion to reminisce about old friends was disrupted by this sudden incident. He could not help but feel a bit heavy. As he walked to the door with Xiao Ju, he suddenly heard someone call out to her, "Miss He." He Yen looked up and saw a man wearing an indigo robe standing not far away. He was as gentle as an orchid. It was Chu Zhao. He also saw Xiao Ju standing next to He Yen. His eyes narrowed slightly, but his smile returned to normal. He walked forward and greeted, "Military Governor Xiao, Miss He." "Fourth young Master Chu, why are you here?" He Yen asked with a smile. Ever since that day at the palace banquet where Emperor Wenxian bestowed the marriage, she had not seen Chu Zhao. She only knew that the Su family and the Chu family were preparing for his marriage with Su Pingting. Compared to He Yan's family background, Chu Zhao and Su Pingting's marriage on the surface seemed to be more well-matched. He Yan did not think that Chu Zhao liked Su Pingting, his fiancée, that much. "I came out to do something," Chu Zhao replied gently. He Yen noticed that the servant following him today was an unfamiliar servant. Her appearance was average and was not Ying Xiang. He could not help but look at the servant a few more times. The servant was not afraid. She stared back at him with a look of scrutiny. He Yen pondered for a moment and understood. Presumably, Miss Su Pingting saw that Ying Xiang was too beautiful by Chu Zhao's side. She was not at ease, so she sent another servant to follow him. On the surface, she was serving him, but in reality, she was monitoring him. After all, Chu Zhao had a dissolute father. His own appearance was outstanding, so it was inevitable that she would think more. However, Chu Zhao was a little pitiful. As a man, he could not even decide whether to keep his servant by his side. Today was just the beginning. Once he got married, that Miss Su Pingting would only become worse. The maidservant also looked at He Yen with a bit of vigilance, as if Chu Zhao was a big fat piece of greasy meat, and all the women on the street were like hungry dogs, staring at him very closely. He Yen did not want to get into trouble, nor did he want to be a target for others. He said, "Xiao Ju and I still have something to do. We will leave first." When Chu Zhao heard the two words, Xiao Ju, he was stunned. His eyes looked at the two of them and then he smiled. "Then, let's meet again another day." He Yen nodded and pulled Xiao Ju away in a hurry. After the two of them left, Chu Zhao looked at the door of the Xianchang Pavilion. His eyes flashed with a trace of deep thought. The servant girl beside him urged, "Fourth young master, it's not early. You should go to the silk shop to choose cloth first. Miss said that all matters related to the wedding must be seen by fourth young master." The young man covered the haze in his eyes and smiled, "Okay." At the Su family's door, the servant Fu Wang was holding a broom and was currently sweeping the floor. He had been absent-minded for the entire afternoon. In fact, it had not been a day or two. Ever since he told the other party about Mother Qin's whereabouts, the mysterious person who was generous had not appeared again. Fu Wang felt very disappointed. He originally wanted to make a big profit from this person before leaving. He did not expect that he would disappear. He felt a bit of regret. He should not have told the other party about Mother Qin's whereabouts so early. Perhaps if he had delayed a bit longer, he could have squeezed more out of the other party. Once he got used to the easy way of getting money, Fu Wang felt particularly unsatisfied when he looked back at the meager monthly allowance. He swept the floor. Suddenly, a copper coin rolled in front of him. Fu Wang subconsciously followed it. He wanted to pick it up, but after taking a few steps, the copper coin was suddenly stepped on by a boot. He was startled. He raised his head and saw a tall man wearing a bamboo hat standing in front of him. The man said in a low voice, "Are you Fu Wang?" Fu Wang was startled and stammered, "Yes, yes. Tea house at the corner of the street. See you at the old place." After saying this, the other party lifted his foot and turned to leave. Fu Wang stared blankly at the dirty copper coin. He bent over and picked it up. He wiped the stain on it and put it in his sleeve. His heart was beating fast. When his companion who went to the toilet returned, Fu Wang used his diarrhea as an excuse to slip away. He went to the tea house where he used to meet with the mysterious person. It was still the innermost tea house. The man from before had already taken a seat. Fu Wang walked in with suspicion in his heart. Although this person's clothes were very similar to the previous person, they were not the same person. Compared to the previous mysterious person, this person in front of him was obviously much taller. "Young master is, the person who asked you to find Mother Qin last time can't come now. The person who will make the deal with you in the future is me," Fei Nu said in a hoarse voice. Xiao Ju asked him to come to the Su family in order to make a deal with this servant called Fu Wang. At the same time, He Yen would be safely removed from this matter to avoid leaving any evidence behind. Fu Wang was startled and carefully asked, "May I ask, the previous young master, dead?" The other party's voice was extremely cold. "So, don't ask what you shouldn't ask, and don't look at what you shouldn't look at." These cold words startled Fu Wang. Although he was greedy for money, he also cherished his life. When he heard that the previous mysterious person had died, he couldn't help but have a myriad of thoughts. After all, even now, he didn't know who that person was or why he was asked to find out Mother Qin's whereabouts. "Young master, why are you looking for me?" Fu Wang asked tentatively. "I want you to search the Su family for all the old belongings of the deceased young Mistress Su, as well as the whereabouts of all the people related to young Mistress Su." The man said concisely. Previously, he was looking for people and things related to concubine Mother He. Now, he was looking for young Mistress Su. Before Fu Wang could speak, he saw the man in front of him take out a box from beside him and put it on the table. He opened the box, revealing dozens of silver ingots neatly stacked inside. Fu Wang's eyes widened. This person was much more generous than the previous young mistress. The previous young mistress gave the silver ingots one by one. When did she become so generous? For a moment, Fu Wang threw his previous timidity to the back of his mind. His heart and eyes were filled with the silver ingots. "How is it?" Fei Nu asked. Well said. Fu Wang hugged the box in front of him. He was so happy that the corners of his mouth bloomed. Even if this little one has to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire, this little one will still do this for young master. This matter is not simple. Fei Nu deliberately lowered his voice. Your family's young master is bound to keep an eye on your movements. It's fine. There are also places where the Fu is lax. It's just that young mistress has passed away for a long time. Most of her old belongings were buried with her body. I don't know if there are any left. Fu Wang was probably dazzled by the silver ingots in front of him. He racked his brain for a while before saying, however, young master was deeply in love with young mistress. The courtyard where young mistress used to live still maintains its original appearance. Perhaps 1 or 2 old items can be found. It's just that there are people watching the courtyard, so it's not easy to enter. However, he smiled fawningly. This little one should be able to think of a way to enter. This person was really greedy. Or perhaps, He Yen had already pulled out the greed in his bones. Now that it was out of control, it saved Fei Nu a lot of effort. Fei Nu looked at Fu Wang, seemingly satisfied. He said, "Very good. These silver ingots are only a deposit. If you can complete the task I've entrusted to you, in the future, our young master will definitely not treat you unfairly." "May I ask?" Fu Wang gathered his courage and asked, "Young master's young master is?" This time, the person opposite him was not as mysterious as the previous mysterious person. He only arrogantly raised his head and said, "The current emperor personally conferred the title of General Feihong. He Rufei Gongzi." General He? Fu Wang asked in surprise. Why would General He? He did not finish his words. Thinking of this person's words, don't ask what you shouldn't ask. He smiled fawningly and said, I know. This little one will definitely do a good job for General He. After the task was completed, Fu Wang returned to the Su residence. He did not want to be out for too long and arouse suspicion. Fei Nu sat in the tea room. He drank the tea in front of him in one gulp and also stood up to leave. In the Crown Prince's residence, there was music and dancing today. The Crown Prince was in an extremely good mood. He half leaned on the soft couch and watched the dancing maids. Su Jingfu sat beside him. Prime Minister, why do you have time to visit me today? The Guangyan smiled and said, Xylin and Pingting's marriage is approaching. The Su residence should be very busy. Su Jingfu smiled and replied, the affairs of the residence are handled by my wife. Today, I came to see your highness about the matter of the Wu To envoy. The Guangyan stopped drinking and looked at Su Jingfu. Oh, what is Prime Minister's opinion? In less than half a month, the Wu Tuo envoy will arrive in the capital, Su Jingfu said. Right now, there are more people in favor of peace than war. It will not be difficult to convince His Majesty. However, I hope that your highness will reconsider the matter of opening the market. What does Prime Minister Su mean? The Guangyan asked indifferently. It was your idea to cooperate with the Yudo. Since it was the Yudo who suggested opening the market, why did Prime Minister Su change your mind at the last minute? Su Jingfu was not angered by the Crown Prince's attitude. He only smiled and said, it's not that I changed my mind. It's just that now that Xiao Huaijin has won the war, the initiative is now in Dawei's hands. There's no need to feign civility with the Yudo. Once the market is opened, it will be difficult to negotiate with the Yudo. It's better to raise the price now. Otherwise, won't the Yudo have the final say? A hint of displeasure appeared on the Crown Prince's face. However, this expression was quickly concealed. Prime Minister Su's words are reasonable. However, Prime Minister Su needs to be clear about one thing. You, this prince, and the Yudo have private dealings. Once this matter spreads, how can there be a future? The Yudo has something on us. If we don't give them the right to open the market in Dawei, will they let this matter rest? If they do something behind this prince's back, what if they delay this prince's great undertaking? The female performer in the room had unknowingly retreated. Su Jingfu was silent for a moment. He then cupped his hands and said to the Crown Prince, Your Highness is wise. The Guangyan smiled slightly. At this time, a beautiful woman wearing a wide-sleeved hibiscus fairy dress walked in from outside. She held a small silver pot in her hand. She walked in front of the Crown Prince, knelt down, and offered the wine in the pot. The Crown Prince drank the wine in front of her in one gulp. Then he pulled the woman into his arms. The woman raised her head, revealing a beautiful face. Su Jingfu finally saw clearly that it was Ying Xiang, who was given to the Crown Prince by Chu Zhao a few days ago. Ying Xiang saw Su Jingfu and smiled sweetly. Ying Xiang greets the Prime Minister. The servant sent by Xylin is indeed clever and quick-witted. The Guangyan pinched the beautiful woman's face in satisfaction. She's quite worthy of this prince's goodwill. Very good. Ying Xiang rebuked. Your Highness is too kind. This servant doesn't dare. Su Jingfu's smile froze slightly. In the past, this servant by Chu Zhao's side was too beautiful. Su Pingting had brought this servant to him many times to punish Ying Xiang. However, Su Jingfu also found out that Ying Xiang was saved by Chu Zhao at the entrance of the brothel. It was probably because Ying Xiang's experience reminded him of his mother, Yi Runmei, that he had a whole new level of respect for Ying Xiang. Chu Zhao was someone he had his eyes on. Su Jingfu did not want their teacher-student relationship to be damaged because of a little servant girl. Moreover, Ying Xiang had always been by Chu Zhao's side. This could also be a test. If Chu Zhao was only a man who was greedy for beauty, then he would not be of much use. There was no need for him to stay by Su Pingting's side. After so many years, Chu Zhao had obviously accepted the test. He had no romantic feelings for Ying Xiang. As Chu Zhao and Su Pingting's wedding date approached, Su Pingting became more and more anxious. It was not that Su Jingfu did not know that Su Pingting had privately gone to find the crown prince of Guangyan. However, he did not have any intention of stopping her. In the future, Chu Zhao would be Su Pingting's husband and Su Jingfu's son-in-law. If a little servant girl made his daughter unhappy, he would kill her, not to mention giving her away. Chu Zhao should have a balance in his heart. Chu Zhao made the right choice. Su Jingfu was very satisfied. Such a smart young man who knew how to make a choice was rare in the current Shuo capital. In the past, Su Jingfu's impression of Ying Xiang had always been that although she was beautiful, she was timid and quiet. She was an ordinary servant girl who did not cause trouble. However, now that he saw Ying Xiang smiling sweetly and leaning against the crown prince, Su Jingfu felt a sense of unease. The crown prince's residence never lacked beauties, nor did it lack smart people. The battles in the harem were not as easy as the politics in the imperial court. When Su Pingting sent Ying Xiang into the crown prince's residence, she did not have any intention of letting her live. However, so many days had passed, and Ying Xiang was living well. She had even received the crown prince's love. This was not something that could be achieved with just beauty. The innocent beauty's eyes were clear, as if she did not understand the filthy things of the world. Among all the beauties, she was like a dewdrop in the morning, with a fragile purity. Even the Guangyan, who did not cherish beauties, looked at her with pity. Su Jingfu sat for a while, then got up and left. After he left, the Guangyan ordered the servants to take away Su Jingfu's bowl, chopsticks, and cups. An old man. He is just a prime minister, but he thinks he is some big shot. He even wants to meddle in my affairs. The crown prince's Guangyan's eyes were filled with viciousness after Su Jingfu left. I think his hands are reaching too far. Ying Xiang leaned against the Guangyan, her small hand gently stroking his chest to help him breathe. She comforted him softly. Your Highness does not need to be too angry. This world will belong to your Highness in the future. Your Highness will do whatever you say. Why do you need to listen to others? These words greatly pleased the Guangyan. The Guangyan kissed her on the cheek. You little girl, you know how to talk. Be careful, Prime Minister Su might find trouble with you if he hears this. Even if Prime Minister wants to find trouble with this servant is your Highness's servant. Your Highness will definitely protect this servant, right? Ying Xiang said sweetly, even if I am your Highness's servant, it is still better than most people in the world. Also, let me tell your Highness a secret. She leaned closer to the Guangyan, looking very charming. This servant was not like the other beauties, who either flattered him or were afraid of him. The Guangyan liked it very much, so he asked, what secret? This servant also does not like Prime Minister Su, Ying Xiang said with a bitter face. Prime Minister Su has too many rules and always has his own ideas. I am really afraid that one day, Prime Minister Su will even interfere in your Highness's affairs. If your Highness sends this servant away, that would be terrible. Chapter 221. In the Shuo capital, there was an anecdote that someone set fire to the library of the Xianchang dojo. The arsonist was found and died in the sea of fire. An entire shelf of books was burned. Coincidentally, it was the notes that General Fei Honghe Rufei had left behind when he was studying in the academy. The Xianchang dojo had been famous for so many years and had produced two famous generals. Of the two famous generals, if General Fengyun was said to be a genius in the hearts of young people, then General Fei Honghe Rufei was often used as a role model by teachers to educate students. You have to know that when General He was in the Xianchang dojo, he was not good at his studies and was often last place. Even so, hard work can make up for it. Today, he is still not a great general of the Dawei. Therefore, not everyone in the world is a genius. But if you work hard, you can achieve great things. General He was an example of hard work can make up for it. Just relying on the words of his classmates and teachers was not enough. The notes in the library were evidence. Now that this evidence was mysteriously burned, Many teachers in the Shuo capital secretly cursed the arsonist for being immoral. But at the same time, the students in the academy all cheered. After all, being forced to make up for it with hard work was not an easy thing to do. In the He residence, He Rufei sat in the study and looked at the subordinate that reported the news. You are saying that the death soldiers that were sent to set the fire did not even leave behind a corpse? He asked. That's right. Rufei, He Yuanxing narrowed his eyes. Do you feel that something is wrong? They just burned a shelf of books and died in the fire. Not even a corpse can be found. I feel that something is wrong. The subordinate respectfully replied. I asked around the Xianchang dojo. The fire in the library is true. Now, all the students in the academy have returned home. The head of the academy is asking people to repair the burned shelves. It is said that not a single note of General He's was left behind. He Yuanxing thought for a moment. Rufei, if you are worried, do you want to personally go? He Rufei flatly refused. Now that we're in troubled times, I have to be even more careful with my words and actions. The Xianchang dojo has just caught fire. If I go there now, it's hard to avoid being caught. We still haven't settled the matter from last time, so we definitely can't let our guard down. Thinking about what happened last time, He Rufei was extremely frustrated. He had already made up his mind to take He Yan's life, or at least he wanted to test him. But he didn't expect that woman to be so skillful. Fortunately, he found all the men of sacrifice and didn't reveal the secret. In the end, he pushed all the evidence to the Fan family, but the Yamen refused to close the case. He Rufei sent someone to investigate and found out that it was Xiao Ju who had interfered. Xiao Huijin valued his fiancée very much. Now it seemed that he wanted to stand up for her. He Rufei didn't care about the daughter of a guard at the city gate, but he had heard of Xiao Ju's methods. Even Su Jingfu couldn't get any benefits from this person, so of course he was afraid. Forget it, since the notes have been burned, let's not talk about the rest. He Rufei changed the topic. Soon, the envoy from the Wu Tuo will enter the capital. At this time, it's better not to cause trouble. He Yuanxing paused and looked at He Rufei. Once the Wu Tuo enters the capital, His Majesty will definitely discuss the war and peace. If not, our He family, Father, our He family will naturally make peace. He Rufei sneered. Not to mention the Battle of Huayuan, we are already tied to Prime Minister Su. Even now, for the sake of the He family, we have to stand together. Xiao Huijin already has a grudge with us. Helping Prime Minister Su is helping ourselves. Of course I know, but... He Yuanxing's eyes flashed. My son, in today's court, the fourth prince's support is quite high. You see, no matter how high the fourth prince's support is, it can't be higher than Prime Minister Su. He Rufei frowned. Moreover, the Dawei values etiquette the most. The crown prince is the legitimate heir, and the fourth prince doesn't have the support of his mother's family. Father, at this time, our He family can't take a neutral position. We must stand on the crown prince's side without reservation. He Yuanxing sighed. I'm just worried. He Rufei's eyes flashed with a trace of mockery. He looked at He Yuanxing. Father, if you want to obtain great wealth, you have to take risks. When my younger sister reached the rank of Grand General, there was no turning back. He Yuanxing stilled, as if the secret in his heart was suddenly exposed. A trace of embarrassment floated on his face. After a pause, he stood up and said, Since you've already made up your mind, then we'll do as you say. I still have matters to attend to, so I'll leave first. He left as if he was escaping. He Rufei looked at He Yuanxing's hurried figure and smiled. He leaned back, his face gradually darkening. He didn't know when it started, but the entire He family had started to act according to his wishes. Even He Yuanxing and He Yuanliang had to be careful when they spoke to him. He Rufei had heard more than once from the servants in the residence that the eldest young master's temperament had become more and more eccentric in recent years. He was especially different from the past. After He Rufei heard this, she ordered for the servant who spoke to be executed immediately. After a few times, no one dared to gossip behind his back. Those who achieved great things didn't care about trifles. Of the two brothers of the He family, He Yuanliang was cowardly, sly, and cunning. He Yuanxing was vicious and merciless, but unfortunately he had many misgivings and didn't dare to take a risk. Now, there was only a woman with the same name and surname, and she had become enemies with Xiao Huijin. When he did things, his hands were tied, and he was an eyesore. How could they know that if they wanted to achieve great things, their hands would be stained with blood? For example, in the Battle of Huayuan, in order to prevent future troubles, he took the initiative to get in touch with Su Jingfu. Su Jingfu and Yudo also had secret dealings. It was just a casual matter, but He Yan's trusted subordinates were all buried in that battle that didn't require him to pay such a high price. After that, there were very few people who understood General Fei Hong. As a general, he had a clear conscience. He Rufei didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt for his own actions. He also didn't feel the slightest bit of sympathy for his cousin who died early. Before He Yan became General Fei Hong, she had already lived under his name for many years. If it weren't for his identity as eldest young master, a woman living in this world should have followed the rules and regulations and followed the husband after marriage. How could there be anything that came after? It could be said that all the military merits that He Yan had earned were originally obtained by relying on his name. Now, everything was just returning to its rightful owner. Not to mention that Marquis Wu and was obviously a substitute pretending to be a ghost. Even if the real He Yan came to take his life, he wouldn't be the least bit afraid. Because this should have been his in the first place. On this day, He Yan left early in the morning and only returned home when it was close to evening. Lady Fan in prison was still crazy, and he couldn't get any useful information out of her. Mother Qin was hidden in the Xiao family, but what she knew was very limited. Su Zhiheng didn't truly trust He Wanru, and Mother Qin deliberately avoided the murder case at the time. Therefore, other than a witness, there wasn't much other evidence for the time being. He Yan could only make a trip himself. Although she was now Marquis Wu, she hadn't established her own network in the imperial court. Her colleagues saw that she was a woman, and although they flattered her on the surface, they actually despised her in their hearts. Other than classmates like Lin Shuang and Yan He, there were very few officials in the imperial court who could be on good terms with her. Fortunately, although the title of Marquis Wu wasn't very useful, the title of Xiao Ju's fiancé was more convenient than He Yan had imagined. As long as she brought up Xiao Ju, most of her colleagues were still willing to give her face. He Yan used the title of Xiao Ju to inquire about matters within the Fuyue army. As she probed like this, she really did find some clues. Ever since He Rufei received the title of Fei Hong, Dewei was peaceful and there were very few wars. He had always stayed in Shuajing and never left the city. The Battle of Huayuan was the first time He Rufei went to the battlefield after a few years. In that battle, He Rufei led the Fuyue army to a Pyrrhic victory, and all of his trusted subordinates died in battle. None of the deputy general's subordinates who were even slightly close to He Rufei survived. Most of the soldiers who participated in that battle were ordinary soldiers who didn't have access to the secrets of the war. However, even if this was the case, there were still some secret rumors that spread. The general that day was very different from before. He seemed to have an argument with the military advisor, but the military advisor had already died in the Battle of Huayuan. However, when the Yudo came that day, we had the advantage. However, the general didn't move and in the end, gave the Yudo an opportunity. However, maybe we were thinking too much. The general has been through hundreds of battles, and naturally isn't someone that we can figure out. The soldier added. Because General Fei Hong's name was too famous, no one doubted his tactics, and no one doubted his loyalty. However, He Yan knew that He Rufei was purposely sending those people to their deaths. Before this, He Rufei had never led an army. In the Battle of Huayuan, he was able to let his most valued subordinates be completely wiped out, and he was able to escape unscathed. There was no such logic in the world, unless he had been secretly colluding with the Yudo. Thinking about this, He Yan realized that when she pretended to be He Rufei in the Rundu and attacked the Yudo's camp, General Huyate's reaction was also very thought-provoking. If He Rufei really wanted to protect his identity from being exposed, and did not hesitate to ask a tiger for its skin, and betray the country's ruler, this crime was unforgivable. As she thought about this, she unknowingly walked to the door. Just as she entered the door, Qin Mei saw her and hurried over, saying, "Miss, you're finally back." "What's wrong?" He Yan asked curiously. Ever since her identity was exposed, He Yan had let Xiao Ju take Qi Wu away during the day and come back at night. A good bodyguard couldn't just stay by her side and not do anything. Therefore, after Qi Wu left, Qin Mei went back to her old days. It was rare to see her so flustered. Someone came to the house. Qin Mei said in a small voice. They said they were looking for Miss. Just as she finished speaking, He Yan heard a familiar voice, "Big brother." She turned around and saw a yellow-clothed youth with red lips and white teeth running over from the hall. He walked 2 circles around her with a face full of surprise. "Big brother, I didn't think you were really a woman." Qin Mei reminded him kindly, "Little Gongzi, our family's Miss is a woman." He Yan didn't expect Cheng Li Su to come to his house. It seemed to have been a long time since he last saw him. This youth had grown a bit taller, but his eyebrows were still as arrogant as before. "Why you here?" He Yan asked. "Today, I snuck out when no one was paying attention," Cheng Li Su said with a bitter face. "After I returned to the capital from the Liangzhou Guard, I was forced to go to school. I had no freedom at all. When I heard that Big Brother had returned to the capital, I wanted to come and see, but the school was very strict and I couldn't leave. When I returned, I heard that you were a woman, and that you had become my uncle's fiancé. Big brother, what's going on? How did you become a woman?" It had been so long, but he didn't expect someone to still be concerned about this matter. He Yan was helpless and could only say, "I was a woman to begin with. At the time, I was forced by the situation and had no choice but to disguise myself as a man and enter the military. When I returned to the capital, my identity was naturally revealed. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding." As soon as he said this, he heard another voice say, "So, you admit that you lied?" He Yan was startled and saw Song Taodao walk out from the back. The little girl was even more lively and delicate than when she was in the Liangzhou Guard. The Song family probably doted on this daughter very much. The material of her clothes looked very expensive, making her seem like a little fairy who didn't eat the food of mortals. However, unlike her delicate face, her expression was like that of an infatuated girl who had been abandoned by a heartless man. "Tao Tao?" He Yan looked at Cheng Li Su. "You came together?" Cheng Li Su rolled his eyes. "Who wants to come with her? When I came to find Big Brother, I just happened to run into this shrew at the door." Song Taotao walked in front of He Yan with a complicated expression. She sized up He Yan from head to toe before saying resentfully, "You really are a woman." He Yan, it was impossible for He Yan not to have noticed the little girl's thoughts from beginning to end. After all, this child was pure and sincere. Her thoughts were written all over her face. Even an idiot could see her undisguised admiration and affection. However, when they were in the Liangzhou Guard, He Yan couldn't reveal his identity. He also couldn't remind this child that she was a woman and couldn't marry Song Tao. Now that she had come knocking on his door, He Yan inexplicably felt a bit guilty. He felt like a stinky man who had deceived a young girl's pure feelings. But she carefully considered her words. She still hadn't figured out how to say it without hurting Song Taodao's fragile young girl heart. Song Taodao also felt wronged. It had been a long time since she found out that He Yan was a woman. However, Song Taotao couldn't convince herself no matter what. She had to see He Yan in person to believe it. Today, she had finally managed to convince her parents to come out with her retainer. She hadn't expected to run into Cheng Li Su, this jinx. That wasn't all. Now that she saw the slender and elegant woman in front of her with a heroic and elegant appearance, Song Taotao finally had to accept a heavy reality. He Yan was indeed a woman. She was even a good-looking woman. How could she have thought that this woman was a man at the time? She had even wanted to break off her engagement with Cheng Li Su and marry him. "It's all your fault." Song Taotao was used to being pampered and was flustered. She vented all her anger on He Yan. "Why did you come to the Liangzhou Guard to deceive people for no reason?" Sorry. He Yan carefully apologized to the child. "I didn't do it on purpose." "Why didn't you do it on purpose?" The more Song Taotao thought about it, the angrier and more wronged she felt. She stared at He Yen aggressively. You just wanted to show off your own heroic appearance so that you could outshine everyone else. Everyone else would look at you and you would be the only one in the limelight. He Yen couldn't say anything. It's all your fault. Enough. Another voice interrupted. He Yen turned around to look. He Yunxing walked in with a cloth bag on his back. He blocked He Yan's way and looked at Song Taotao with a cold face. Who are you? Who allowed you to be so impudent to my sister in my house? He Yen felt a headache coming on. Right now, there was only her, Qing Mei, and the naughty child in the room. The situation was very awkward. Yunxing, this is Miss Song, and this is young Master Cheng. They are all friends I made in the Liangzhou Guard. She then said to Song Taotao and the others, this is my younger brother, He Yunxing. Friends? He Yunxing glanced at Song Taotao and said unhappily, how can friends be so aggressive? He Yen, I already told you not to be friends with just anyone. Song Taotao was stunned for a moment. He Yunxing's appearance was too sudden and she didn't react for a moment. At this moment, after hearing He Yan's words, she focused her attention on He Yunxing again. In fact, He Yunxing was a bit similar to He Yen, but he wasn't as warm and gentle as He Yen. He always had a smile on his face when he met people. He was taller than He Yen by a head. The handsome and cold young man standing there was quite eye-catching. A man who looked similar to He Yen, but his temperament was completely different? This feeling was very strange. Song Taotao stared at him blankly and forgot to talk back. He Yen fiercely pulled He Yunxing's arm and whispered in his ear, she's a girl. Can you not be so fierce? I don't care if she's a girl or a man, He Yunxing frowned. Talking to you like that, do you think I'm dead? This damn child is getting more and more rebellious, He Yen thought. He guessed that Song Taotao would cry after being yelled at like this. Before he could think of how to comfort the crying girl, Cheng Lisu had already surrounded He Yunxing again in surprise. She grabbed his hand and said, you're my big brother's younger brother, so you're my brother too. My name is Cheng Lisu. Brother He, did you just get out of school? He Yunxing had never seen such a friendly person. He immediately took a step back and shook off Cheng Lisu's hand. He frowned and said, who's your big brother? It's your sister. Cheng Lisu answered matter-of-factly. As soon as the words came out of her mouth, she seemed to feel that it was wrong and quickly changed her words. It seems that I shouldn't call her big brother now. How about calling her sister? No, my big brother is my uncle's fiancé. In that case, I should call her aunt. He looked up at He Yen and called out with perfect articulation, aunt. He Yen, how did she get such a big nephew out of nowhere? That was not all. Cheng Lisu looked at He Yunxing and said, you're my aunt's brother, so I should call you Uncle? Uncle He. The He siblings were shocked by Cheng Lisu's natural way of calling him a relative. Even Song Taotao could not stand it and scolded her, why are you calling him that? Be careful or military governor Xiao will come after you if he hears you. I'm not calling him that. Anyway, I'm going to be your aunt sooner or later. Cheng Lisu did not feel that there was anything wrong with having a lower seniority. She said happily, in the future, I'll have 2 more relatives. Aunt, uncle, I haven't eaten yet. Do you want to have dinner together? He Yunxing could not take it anymore. He said to He Yen, what kind of people have you befriended? He turned around and left in a huff. He Yen, she couldn't be blamed. Cheng Lisu had never played by the rules. She smiled and looked at Song Taotao. Taotao, have you eaten? Do you want to eat together? She thought that the little girl was here to denounce her today, and this meeting was not very pleasant. Second Miss Song, who was pampered and spoiled, might not be used to eating in this rough house. Unexpectedly, Song Tao paused and nodded as if nothing had happened. He Yen was really frightened. What was going on today? Both of them did not play by the rules. However, since they had already stayed, they still had to pay for the meal. However, the He family's food was simple. He was afraid that it would not suit the young master's and young ladies' tastes. He Yen ordered some money and had Qing Mei go out and buy some side dishes. When He Sui came back, he was quite surprised by the people in the house. When he heard that they were He Yan's friends from the Liang Province Guard, he immediately smiled and greeted them, thinking that they were familiar juniors. Everyone ate at the same table. Other than Song Taotao, who was silent, and He Yunxing, who had a sour face, they got along quite well. He Sui always wanted to know how He Yan was doing in the Liang province guard. However, it was not good to ask Xiao Ju all the time. Now that there was a ready-made candidate, of course, he would not let go of such a good opportunity. Cheng Lisu was also a chatterbox. As long as He Sui asked, he would tell him everything he knew. He Yan suspected that he could even remember how many biscuits he ate in the Liang province guard. However, thanks to this group of children, his gloomy mood from inquiring about the Fuyue army during the day was greatly alleviated. After the meal, He Yan saw them out the door. Song Taotao and Cheng Lisu both brought their own carriages and servants. Cheng Lisu had only been with He Sui for a short period of time, but she had already become good friends with him despite the difference in age. They had even agreed on a date for their next meal. He Yan finally managed to send them away with great difficulty before he left the room. Outside the door, Song Taotao got into her family's carriage. The maidservant next to her carefully asked, "Young miss, you've seen Miss He today. In the future, you won't make a fuss about breaking off the engagement with young Master Cheng, right?" Her sweetheart was a woman, so naturally, it was impossible. In the future, what reason would Song Taotao have to break off the engagement? Song Taotao said unconcernedly, "I admire Military Governor Xiao very much. It is my good fortune to be able to become friends with him. However, I have never thought of becoming his niece-in-law." The maidservant was stunned. She did not understand what Song Taotao meant. Song Taotao lowered her head. Thinking of the face of the green-clothed youth she had just seen, she secretly pursed her lips. She originally wanted to be Xiao Ju's sister-in-law. Unfortunately, Xiao Jing was already married. However, now that she thought about it, being Xiao Ju's sister-in-law was not a bad idea. Chapter 222. At night, at the Su residence, someone got out of bed and lit an oil lamp. The mattress next to her was empty. Su Zhiheng was sleeping in the study again tonight. He Xining walked to the table, picked up an outer robe and put it on. She looked at the flickering wick of the oil lamp with a complicated expression. She didn't know when it started, but there seemed to be an invisible barrier between her and Su Zhiheng. To be more precise, after the last palace banquet, Su Zhiheng became particularly strange. Later, she met her eldest sister, Marquis Wu He Yan, at Yuhua Temple. Not long after she returned to the residence, He Rufei came to visit her. Rather than calling it a visit, it was better to call it a probe. There were some things that once there were signs of suspicion, it couldn't be dispelled. He Xining could feel that the Su family was hiding a big secret. Perhaps it was related to her eldest sister who had passed away, or perhaps it was also related to the He family. She stood in front of the window. The winter in the capital was extremely cold. On such a cold night, the servants had all returned to their rooms to sleep. He Xining looked at the bare branches outside the window. After thinking for a long time, she finally put on a cloak, picked up an oil lamp, and left the room. Her movements were very light and she walked very carefully. She didn't disturb anyone else. The Su family's night watch was outside the main courtyard and wouldn't come in. The light of the oil lamp was very dim. It could only barely illuminate the path under her feet. He Xining felt her way in the dark until she arrived in front of an abandoned courtyard. This abandoned courtyard was the courtyard where her eldest sister, He Yan, had once lived. Even after He Yan's death, Su Zhiheng still maintained the courtyard's original appearance. The last time He Xining was here, she saw Su Zhiheng frantically rummaging through the drawers. She hadn't been able to see what Su Zhiheng was looking for before she was discovered. This time, there was no one around, so she wanted to take a look. Although no one lived in this courtyard, the snow in the courtyard had been swept clean. She walked to He Yan's room. The room wasn't locked. With a gentle push, the door opened. He Xining walked in. There was a musty smell in the room. It was cold and damp. He Xining was slightly surprised. Didn't they say that Su Zhiheng often missed his elder sister? But if he really missed his elder sister, why didn't he clean the room? Instead, it was covered in dust. It was as if no one had set foot here for a long time, and he couldn't wait to avoid it. He Xining looked around with the lamp in his hand. This was a woman's boudoir. In front of it was a shelf with some inexpensive vases and ornaments. In the middle was a small table covered with a thick layer of dust. The teacups and teapot were even covered with cobwebs. Further inside was a large wooden bed. In comparison, this bed seemed to be cleaner as it was covered with a thin blanket. This room looked cold and empty. It was not as warm and exquisite as a girl's boudoir. As soon as he entered, he felt a chill in his face. Although He Yen had married not long after he came back to live in the He family, the boudoir before marriage was still meticulously decorated. If this was the house where He Yen used to live in the Su family, and this house still retained the original appearance of He Yen when she was alive, then He Xining thought that her elder sister who died early most likely didn't live as well as the rumors said in the He family. If it was because he was blind, then it wasn't appropriate to put too many things in the room to avoid tripping over the master, but the furnishings and utensils here were too shabby and perfunctory. There was also nothing to relieve boredom. A blind man living alone in such a large room. If it was him, he would have been driven crazy long ago. He Xining walked to the front of the table. Last time, she saw Su Zhiheng rummaging through the boxes and cabinets. She didn't know what he was looking for. She pulled out a wooden drawer, and as expected, it was empty. Thinking about it, if there really was something, it would have been taken away by Su Zhiheng long ago. She didn't realize that she had unknowingly placed Su Zhiheng in an opposing position. Towards this gentle and considerate husband, she no longer relied on and trusted him like she did in the past. Instead, it was replaced by vigilance and suspicion. Even the warmth of the past had become hypocrisy in He Xining's eyes. He Xining walked around the room and checked all the wooden drawers and shelves. She didn't find anything useful. She had been out for too long, and it was too cold outside. The wind directly drilled into her knees. She rubbed her numb legs, looked at the relatively clean bed, and sat on the edge of the bed. In the room, only the oil lamp in her hand emitted a faint light. Sitting here, she inexplicably felt a bit strange. When she calmed down, He Xining was a little regretful. Why did she come here all of a sudden? There was no one here. It was said that the souls of the dead would linger in the place where they lived. If his elder sister was here, although they were blood relatives, they weren't very close before. Moreover, if they really saw a ghost at night, it could scare people to death. He Xining couldn't help but grip the bedpost tightly. This was a habit she had developed since childhood. When she was young, she was timid and always slept with her mother. When she grew older, she couldn't sleep with her mother anymore. He Xining had her own courtyard. When she lived alone, she was still very afraid. When she was most afraid, she would lean against the inside of the bed at night, tightly holding the bedpost against the wall, and softly praying for Bodhisattva's protection. It was the same today. However, when her fingers slid down the bedpost, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. He Xining was startled. She stretched out her hand to touch the spot just now and felt that something was wrong. She climbed up to the head of the bed and raised the oil lamp to look inside. Suddenly, she found that on the bedpost against the wall, there was a slightly protruding piece of wood. The girl was careful. She used her fingers to pull it out, and that piece of wood fell off. From inside, a roll of yellow paper was revealed. It seemed to have something written on it. Her heart was beating fast. She only knew that if this thing was hidden here, it must be very important. Perhaps this was what Su Zhiheng was looking for. She couldn't tell when someone would come here. He Xining exerted her strength and pulled out something that looked like a book from the bedpost that had been deliberately hollowed out. She hurriedly hid the book in her bosom and hurriedly fastened the wood of the bedpost. Only then did she carefully leave while holding the oil lamp. The surroundings were strangely quiet. He Xining secretly returned to her room. Only then did she dare to take out the book from her clothes. She used the weak light of the oil lamp to take a look. Sure enough, it was a book. She looked at a few pages and was stunned. This was a military book? All kinds of military strategies were recorded in it. On the side, there were notes and opinions written by the reader. Looking at the handwriting, it definitely wasn't Su Zhiheng's. No one in the Su family practiced martial arts. Moreover, it was hidden in such a secretive way. It was also in He Yan's room. No matter how she looked at it, this military book was left behind by her elder sister who died early. But how could Yen read a military book? If it was her cousin Hirufei, it would be more likely. However, Hirufei's military book didn't appear in the Su family. Why would they hide it so carefully? Shining held the military book in her hands. She couldn't understand what was going on. At this time, someone's voice suddenly sounded from outside. Shining was startled. She quickly blew out the oil lamp and hid the book in the lowest box under the table. She quickly walked to the bed and lay down. Just as she lay down, a maidservant knocked on the door. Eldest young mistress? Eldest young mistress? What's the matter? Shining pretended to be sleepy as she answered. There was silence outside for a while. Then, someone said, "A thief entered the courtyard. Eldest young master told us to come and ask eldest young mistress." A thief entered? Shining was a bit nervous. However, she still pretended to be surprised. She put on her outer clothes and opened the door for the maidservant. She asked in confusion, "How could a thief enter the Fu?" "I don't know." That maidservant saw that Shining was really safe and sound in the room. She seemed relieved and said, "Eldest young master is currently interrogating the thief." "I'll go take a look," Shining said. She closed the door and followed the maidservant to the main hall. In the main hall, Su Zhiheng was sitting on a chair in the middle. A group of servants stood around him. A person dressed as a servant was kneeling on the ground. He continuously kowtowed to Su Zhiheng. "Eldest young master, please spare my life. Eldest young master, please spare my life. This little one really didn't take anything. I didn't take anything." Su Zhiheng's face was so dark that it was about to drip water. He stared at him and said, "Stop talking nonsense. Hand over the things you stole from young Mistress Bedpost. Otherwise, you will die here today." When he said this, his eyes were gloomy and fierce. He was completely different from his previous gentle and amiable appearance. Shining was startled. When she heard the words bedpost, she became even more nervous. She reluctantly squeezed out a smile and walked to Su Zhiheng's side. "Husband, what happened?" Seeing Shining, Su Zhiheng's expression relaxed. He pointed at the servant on the ground and said, "This person sneaked into Ahe's courtyard at night and stole Ahe's old things from the bedpost. He is extremely hateful." Fu Wang, the servant on the ground, hurriedly explained, "Eldest young master, it really wasn't this little one. When this little one found the bedpost, it was already empty. This little one really didn't take anything from inside." Fu Wang was also complaining incessantly in his heart. Today, he took advantage of the night when there was no one around. It was a good opportunity to sneak into eldest young mistress's room to find the mysterious person's old things. As a result, he walked around the room and found that there was one place that was different from the others. It was the bedpost in the inner room. He originally thought that there would be some secret hidden inside, but when he opened it, it was empty. He didn't have time to feel regret. He didn't know when the people outside were alerted, but he was caught and brought to Su Zhiheng. "Eldest young master, it really wasn't this little one who did it. If you don't believe me, you can search this little one's body and the place where this little one lives. This little one is innocent." Shining looked at the servant who kept kowtowing and begging for mercy. He couldn't help but be frightened. It seemed that this servant had become her scapegoat. However, if it was just ordinary property, with Su Zhiheng's temperament, he wouldn't be so harsh. At worst, he would just beat him with a plank and drive him out of the residence. Why did it seem like he was going to fight to the death? Could it be that Su Zhiheng knew what was inside the bedpost? But it was just an ordinary military book. Shining didn't understand. "I see that your mouth is full of lies and not a single word of truth. Since it's like this, I won't be able to get a reason from you even if you stay here. I'll hand you over to the authorities to be dealt with," Su Zhiheng said coldly. As soon as these words came out, Fu Wang's face changed color. Since ancient times, most of the servants who were handed over to the authorities by their masters would die. Moreover, their deaths were especially torturous. He was just a little greedy for money, but he didn't want to lose his life. Moreover, he was so wronged. It had to be known that he didn't get anything. Since it was like this, of course protecting his own life was the most important thing. Fu Wang pleaded, "I beg eldest young master not to hand this little one over to the authorities. In fact, this little one was entrusted by someone to steal something. This little one will tell eldest young master everything I know. Can eldest young master spare this little one's life?" Entrusted by someone? Su Zhiheng looked at him. That's right, that's right. Fu Wang kowtowed loudly. Even if this little one was given 100 guts, this little one still wouldn't dare to steal from the estate. Su Zhiheng stared at Fu Wang, as if trying to discern whether Fu Wang's words were true or false. After a moment, he said to the surrounding people, "All of you can leave. I have something to ask this thief." He Shining glanced at the manservant on the ground. "Husband, you also leave." Su Zhiheng's attitude was very firm. He Shining didn't say anything and left. After the door closed, she looked in the direction of the room. She didn't know when, but her palms were already soaked with sweat. That military book? What exactly was going on? Inside the room, Su Zhiheng opened his mouth and asked, "Speak. Who told you to steal from the Su estate?" "It's General He. You dare to lie to me?" Su Zhiheng was furious. Fu Wang was so frightened that he immediately knelt down. "This little one doesn't dare to lie to eldest young master. This little one's acquaintance said that their master was General He." Su Zhiheng's hands clenched into fists, and he suppressed his emotions as he said, "Why did he Rufei ask you to steal things?" "This little one also doesn't know." Fu Wang wiped the sweat from his forehead. "They gave this little one a sum of money, and this little one was momentarily blinded by greed. I thought that I was only going to steal a few things and inquire about a person. It wasn't anything outrageous, so I agreed." "Inquire about a person?" Su Zhiheng's eyes narrowed. "What exactly did they want you to do?" Fu Wang only hoped that he could get out alive. He didn't care about anything else and simply told him everything he knew. They wanted this little one to find some old things from eldest young mistress's life, as well as people related to eldest young mistress. When this little one entered the estate, eldest young mistress had already passed away. "I really couldn't find her, so I just thought that maybe I could steal something." He was also very cunning. He only said that he was caught before he could do anything for the other party, and he didn't mention the matter of Mother Qin at all. "Tonight, I snuck into eldest young mistress's room, but before I could find anything, I was discovered. But eldest young master, the things in the bedpost really weren't taken by this little one. When this little one found the bedpost, it was already empty." These words weren't false, but unfortunately, Su Zhiheng was still skeptical of him. "I beg eldest young master to spare this little one's life. This little one won't dare to do it again," he pleaded. Eldest young master Su, who had always been soft-hearted and easy to talk to, didn't answer today. Fu Wang gathered his courage and looked up. He saw that under the light of the lantern, the man's face was half bright and half dark. Half of his face looked like an ordinary person, but the other half looked like a malevolent demon. It was so twisted that it made people's hearts turn cold. After an unknown amount of time, just as Fu Wang felt that his little life was about to be lost, the people above spoke. Su Zhiheng said, "Since you said that General He asked you to do something, this eldest young master will spare your life." His voice deepened. "The next time they ask you to meet, you need to tell them that you didn't find anything. Also, you can't tell anyone that I found you." Was he going to lie to He Rufei's people? Fu Wang's suspicions flashed through his mind. He quickly lowered his head and said with tears of gratitude, "Many thanks, eldest young master. This little one will definitely do a good job for eldest young master." Su Zhiheng looked at the servant kneeling and kowtowing at his feet and didn't say anything. He Rufei actually secretly sent people to investigate He Yan's old belongings. What was he trying to do? Was he trying to use this information to threaten him? Yes, a few days ago, there was a big fire in the Xianchang restaurant. Coincidentally or not, it just happened to burn He Rufei's childhood notebook. As soon as the news reached the Su family, Su Zhiheng guessed that He Rufei was behind it. It seemed that He Rufei wasn't as calm about the appearance of his cousin who had the same name as him. The He family had too many secrets that could be used against them. Madam He Rufei, He Yuanxing, and He Yuanliang. In comparison, the Su family had too few secrets that could be used against them. Even He Yan's death wasn't done by him. If the truth was revealed, Su Zhiheng could completely escape unscathed. Perhaps it was because of this that He Rufei felt uneasy. That was why he tried every possible means to get hold of He Yan's secret in the Su family. This way, as long as he could prove that he also knew about He Yan and He Rufei swapping identities, the Su family wouldn't be able to escape when the truth came to light one day. He Rufei was afraid. That was why he wanted to drag the Su family down with him at this time. Su Zhiheng's face darkened. Even though he knew about this matter from the beginning, he also understood that the He family and Su family were in the same boat. However, when this matter really happened right under his nose, he still felt displeased. In the past, when he was safe and sound, he naturally hoped that they could live well and enjoy glory together. However, once something happened, He Rufei's actions were truly unethical. Since He Rufei was going overboard, then he didn't need to care about their feelings. Speaking of which, just like how Fu Wang went around He Yan's room but didn't find anything, if something really happened, as long as there was no evidence, Su Zhiheng could still protect himself. At night, He Yan tossed and turned on the bed, unable to sleep. She knew that He Rufei wasn't General Fei Hong and that his story was full of loopholes. However, everyone had to pay attention to evidence. It was impossible for the truth to come out with just one sentence from her. Furthermore, the truth sounded so inconceivable. For the time being, there were no living witnesses in the Fuyue army. Just Mother Qin alone wasn't enough. If they wanted to get hold of He Rufei's weakness, they had to start with the battle at Huayuan. During the battle at Huayuan, He Rufei and Yudo must have had an unspeakable relationship. He Rufei was very cautious. If they wanted to find evidence that He Rufei had colluded with the enemy and committed treason, perhaps they had to go to the He residence. The He residence. He Yan sat up from the bed and leaned against the head of the bed. She looked at the curtains and her thoughts gradually drifted away. In reality, she wasn't afraid to step into the He residence again. She had enough of being used and treated coldly by that He family. When she returned to the He residence, she wouldn't have any old feelings for them. However, when she thought about meeting Madame He again, she didn't know how to face her. Chapter 223. For the next few days, it was snowing heavily every day in Shuo City, and the streets were much more deserted. In the Su Fu, He Xining stood in front of the study and knocked on the door. The person inside said, "Come in." He Xining walked in. The kitchen made some red bean sweet soup. "It's too cold outside." He Xining smiled as she took the small bowl out of the basket and placed it in front of Su Zhiheng's table. "Husband, drink some to warm up your body. Don't freeze." Su Zhiheng's gaze fell on the small white porcelain bowl on the table. In the porcelain bowl, the red bean sweet soup emitted a sweet and greasy aroma. The brown soup made him suddenly think of the tonic that the He family had sent a long time ago. It had the same color and the same sweet aroma. That soup was extremely effective. After He Yan drank it, he had a high fever for 3 days and could no longer see. Su Zhiheng subconsciously raised his head. He Xining was looking at him tenderly. Her appearance was somewhat similar to He Yan's. Su Zhiheng's heart suddenly jumped and he subconsciously stood up. His sleeve accidentally brushed against the soup bowl on the table. The sweet soup spilled all over the floor and stained his clothes. "Husband, are you all right?" He Xining jumped in fright. She quickly took out a handkerchief to wipe the soup off Su Zhiheng's body and called a servant to clean it up. "I'm fine." Seeing that the sweet soup had spilled, Su Zhiheng was relieved. He took the handkerchief and wiped the water off his body. "This bowl spilled. I'll have someone send another bowl over." He Xining hurriedly said. "No need." Su Zhiheng held her hand and smiled as he pulled her to sit next to him. "I'm not hungry." The woman's hand was warm and soft. It slightly dispelled the uneasiness that had been plaguing him for the past few days. He Xining sat down next to him. After thinking for a bit, she said to Su Zhiheng, "I heard from Lu that my mother's health wasn't good. She has been bedridden. I want to go back and see my mother. Husband, do you have some free time these few days?" Why don't you come with me to He clan? He Xining felt uneasy when he kept the book in her room. If one day Su Zhiheng ordered people to search the entire mansion on a whim, he would be easily discovered. Moreover, this military book came out of nowhere. She herself didn't understand what was going on. It would be better to go back to the He family and ask second Madam He about it. Her mother knew more about her eldest sister than she did. You want to go back to the He family? Su Zhiheng paused and asked He Xining. He looked at He Xining with a scrutinizing gaze. He Xining's heart skipped a beat. She grabbed his arm and said, I'll go back and take a look. I'll be back tomorrow. Husband, can you go back with me? My mother hasn't seen you in a long time. He Xining hadn't suffered much since she was young. When he married her, Su Zhiheng knew that she was a bit arrogant and willful when she was in He clan. However, after she entered the Su residence, she had always been well behaved. This was different from He Yan's temperament. Although He Yan never caused trouble and knew his place, it was impossible for him to act spoiled like He Xining. Su Zhiheng said, I'm very busy these few days. I'm afraid I don't have time to accompany you back to the residence. How about this? I'll ask someone to send you back first. After a few days, when I have free time, I'll accompany you. He Xining timely revealed a wronged expression and said, Su Zhiheng smiled and held her hand. His thoughts had already drifted to other places. He naturally couldn't go to He clan right now. Not to mention He Yuanqing and his brother, who knew what He Rufei was planning right now. He had arranged spies in his residence to try and find something that could be used against him, and He Xining as well. Su Zhiheng thought that although He Xining was his wife, her surname was He. Who knew if He Rufei had communicated with her? This was also good. Since He Rufei was able to arrange spies in his residence, who knew if he wouldn't beat him at his own game? This time, he would let He Xining go home first to find out. In the middle of the night, it began to snow again. It was freezing cold. He Yan groped his way out of bed in the dark. The room was pitch black and she didn't even light an oil lamp. Fortunately, she had long been used to being blind. Even if she didn't light a lamp, she wouldn't fall down when she walked around the room. After she finished dressing, she took out a short sword from the drawer and went out. The snow was very heavy. In order to make it easier for her to move, she wore very thin clothes. She only wore a thin layer of cotton underneath her night clothes. As soon as she went out, her snot was about to come out from the cold. There was a charcoal fire burning in the fragrant stable, giving off a weak light. The courtyard was quiet inside and outside. He Sui, his son, and Qing Mei were all sleeping soundly. There was also no movement in Qi Wu's room. He Yan quietly opened the door and walked out. There was snow everywhere and the long street was covered in a silvery white. Lanterns hung under the eaves of the houses along the street, bright red. It was very lively. In less than 2 months, it would be the new year. The New Year's atmosphere was already there, although it was still a bit cold. He Yan exhaled and a white fog immediately appeared in front of her. It was strange to say that the Liangzhou Guard's winter was much colder than Shuajing's winter. However, at that time, they trained every day until they were drenched in sweat and forgot about the cold. Now that they were here, they really did stomp their feet in the cold. She had only walked a few steps when she almost reached the end of the street. She saw a carriage parked there. He Yan was stunned for a moment. In the middle of the night, there was no one on the empty street. It was as if she had seen a ghost when there was such a carriage in the middle of the road. He Yan narrowed her eyes and looked carefully. There was a coachman sitting in front of the carriage. When he saw her, he took off his hat. Fei Nu? He Yan said in surprise, Why are you here? Fei Nu did not speak. Instead, the curtain of the carriage was lifted and a person walked down. He was wearing a dark gold brocade robe with cloud patterns. His figure was tall and elegant. When he looked over, he was like a painting in the snowy night. It was Xiao Ju. He walked over, his boots stepping on the snow, making a squeaking sound. He Yan waited for him to come closer and asked, Why aren't you sleeping at night? What are you doing here? Xiao Ju raised his eyebrows and said disapprovingly, What about you? Why did you go out in the middle of the night? He Yan was speechless for a long time, I couldn't sleep, so I came out to relax. Xiao Ju sneered and stared at her calmly. Eldest miss, you came out to relax and wear night clothes? He Yan scratched her head. She knew that this person was very smart and would not be easy to fool. She frowned and said, I came out to do something. She looked at Xiao Ju and suddenly realized something. She looked back and glanced at him. You followed me all day and even in the middle of the night? Xiao Ju, even if I am your fiancé, you don't have to follow me so closely. Xiao Ju, what are you thinking? He seemed to be speechless. You went out in the morning and bought a short sword from the blacksmith shop in the west of the city. Tell me, he said lazily, you went out so late at night. Did you kill or set fire? When I bought the short sword, didn't I get rid of Chi-Wu? He Yan was puzzled. How did you know? When she did these things, she was always very careful. She knew that Chi-Wu would be suspicious if he found out, but it was not easy to get rid of that big guy. It's not Chi-Wu, Xiao Ju said. Anyway, I know. He glanced at the short sword that He Yan hung on her waist and said with some disdain, Didn't I give you money, so you can't buy a good sword? What does this have to do with the sword? He Yan said, The most important thing is the person who uses the sword and the swordsmanship. My swordsmanship is good, I don't need a good sword to shine. Xiao Ju nodded and said, You are diligent and thrifty. Those are good words. He Yan asked, Why do I feel like you are scolding me? The snow outside didn't stop, and soon her hair and body were covered with a thin layer of frost. Xiao Ju pulled her under the eaves of a house by the street and stood on the outside, blocking most of the wind and snow. She only asked, You haven't told me yet. It's so late, why did you bring a sword out? Seeing that he could not hide it anymore, He Yan sighed and told the truth. I was thinking that He Rufei must have some other relationship with the Yudo. He Rufei is a cautious person, so it's hard to find anything that can be used against him. I want to go to the He family to find other evidence. If I can find evidence that He Rufei is related to the Yudo, that would be the best. The He family? Xiao Ju frowned slightly. You plan to go alone. I was also a member of the He family in my previous life. He Yan leaned closer and whispered, I am very familiar with the inside and outside of the He family. I also know secret passages that others don't know about. It's easy to sneak in. It's definitely not a problem for me to go alone. No, Xiao Ju interrupted her without thinking, it's too dangerous. No, what's so dangerous about it? He Yan refuted, I can fight against 10 of the He family's guards. At this time, they are already asleep. The room He Rufei is living in now is the room that I used to live in. I know all the secret compartments in the bookshelves and the hidden compartments in the wooden drawers. When I finish looking, I will leave immediately. It won't be a problem. I have ambushed tens of thousands of Yudo's camps at night. There's nothing to be afraid of about the He family. He Rufei is already suspicious of you and will definitely increase the number of guards in the residence. It's not a good time to go to the He family now. If we wait any longer, I'm afraid that all the evidence will be destroyed. Xiao Ju's gaze fell on her body. After a moment, she said, I'll go with you. What? He Yan immediately refused. If you go with me, you will become a burden. I can escape easily by myself. It will be very inconvenient if you go with me. Then you don't have to go. Xiao Ju, He Yan was angry. Why are you being so unreasonable? This person was so stubborn? But if she quarreled with him here, the neighbors would be woken up and she wouldn't be able to escape. He Yan was in a deadlock with him for a long time. Finally, she gave in and gritted her teeth. All right, but I really didn't expect that second young Master Xiao would be so clingy in private. Everyone says that second young Master Xiao is cold and unapproachable. Same to you. Xiao Ju crossed her arms and looked at her. Lady, he has the habit of going to other people's residences in the middle of the night to relax. He leaned over slightly and looked down at He Yan. His tone was so indifferent that it made people gnash their teeth. I'm afraid that if something happens, the husband will pay for his wife's debts. This person probably never lost an argument with others. He Yan was also annoyed and said fiercely, Forget it. If you want to go, then go. But I'll say it in advance. When we really go to the He family, don't regret it. Xiao Ju smiled and reached out to her waist. He Yen quickly protected the belt. What are you doing? He took a deep breath. What do you think I'm going to do? A man and a woman alone in the middle of the night. There are many things that can be done. He Yen whispered. Then who knows what you're going to do? He Yen, Xiao Ju said calmly. I'm just joking. He Yen smiled fawningly. Your sword is too lousy. Change it to this one. He took off his sword and handed it to He Yen. Isn't this the autumn drinking sword? He Yen was stunned. Xiao Ju had already stuffed the autumn drinking sword into her hand. She knew that the autumn drinking sword was precious and wanted to return it to him. Why are you giving it to me? Xiao Ju looked at her and smiled. Change it to this one. I don't want other people to say that my Xiao family is poor and embarrassing me. What other people? He Yen quickly said. Pay, we're going to the He family today. We definitely won't alarm anyone. How can other people see us? Without waiting for He Yen to finish, Xiao Ju had already pulled out the short sword at her waist and walked forward. Take it. He Yen had no choice but to follow. Fei Nu stopped the carriage at the side of the road. The three of them left together and rushed towards the He family. The He family residence was located in the west of the city. The residence didn't look as elegant as the Su family residence, but it was still considered imposing. Fei Nu was waiting outside the residence. He Yen brought Xiao Ju to the backyard wall. When they reached a place, he stopped and said in a low voice, Here, this is my secret passage. Xiao Ju stared at the hole in front of him, which could barely allow one person to crawl through, and asked calmly, Your so-called secret passage is a dog hole? Sure. He Yen put a finger to his lips. Lower your voice. This dog hole isn't an ordinary dog hole. I dare say that no one in the He family knows about it. When I was young, I disguised myself as a man. However, I didn't have much strength. When I was with other boys, I was always worried that I would be exposed. My family was also afraid that I would be exposed too much outside and cause trouble, so they locked me up in the residence. Before I entered the Xian Changguan, every day before dawn, I would crawl out of this dog hole and climb to the capital's Donghuang Mountain to help the monks carry water and chop firewood. In the beginning, the skin on my hands was very worn out. Later on, after calluses grew, I was able to practice martial arts with shirtu hanging from my wrist. The youths in the Xian Changguan are very powerful. If I hadn't secretly climbed the mountain to practice, I'm afraid that I would have been even more miserable in the Xian Changguan. Her heart was moved. Could it be that at that time, I helped the monks in the temple too much work, so Buddha saw my sincerity and gave me a chance to live another life? No wonder everyone always says that we should build good karma. It's true, don't you think so? She turned to look at Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju pinched her forehead and said, So, what you mean is, you want me to crawl through the dog hole? He Yen said, I already said that you must come with me, so don't regret it. It's not like I didn't remind you. Xiao Ju slightly frowned and turned her head away, as if she was disgusted by it. I'll climb over the wall. Don't, there are traps everywhere in the He family's walls. He Rufei must have rearranged them. I also don't know where they are. If you trigger the traps, all our previous efforts will be wasted. He Yen looked at her. Then why don't you be like Fei Nu and wait for me outside? I can go in by myself. Young master, please do me a favor, He Yen said helplessly. I can't do this, I can't do that, what do you want? Xiao Ju looked at the dog hole for a moment without any expression. Suddenly, she lifted the corner of her robe and half knelt down. She turned her head to He Yen and said, You go first. This time, He Yen was really shocked. You really want to crawl through? Hurry up. Xiao Ju couldn't bear it anymore. He Yen originally wanted to use the dog hole to make Xiao Ju back off. He didn't expect her to really crawl through it. For a moment he was filled with emotions. Xiao Ju's sacrifice was really too big. If the soldiers of the Nine Flags Battalion knew that their commander-in-chief didn't sleep and crawled through a dog hole in the middle of the night, they would definitely kill her. However, He Yen didn't purposely make things difficult for her. This dog hole in the He family's house was dug by her personally. The He family didn't like to raise dogs. He Yen was the one who personally raised the stray dogs outside. This place was much safer than climbing over the wall, as Xiaoju had said. Then follow me. He Yen whispered, be gentle. She didn't mind crawling through the dog hole at all. After all, she had crawled through it since she was young. It had been a long time since she last crawled through it. She felt quite familiar with it. She moved her body and crawled in like a loach. Xiaoju endured it and crawled in as well. The walls of the He residence were thick, and this hole was dug by He Yen when he was young, so it wasn't very big. With his current adult stature, it seemed a little narrow. As soon as he crawled out, before he could stand firm, he saw a yellow thing under the weak light of the lantern pounce over with a whoosh. Xiaoju was about to make a move when He Yen whispered in surprise, Air Mao. The thing called Air Mao ran in front of He Yen, rolled around, and grabbed He Yen's leg affectionately. It was a yellow dog. Xiaoju asked, what is this? It's my pet. He Yen whispered, I thought Air Mao would be chased out after I died. I didn't expect it to still be here. To be precise, when He Yen was young, he picked up a stray dog and brought it home. He named it Mao. The He family didn't like dirty stray dogs. However, at that time, He Yen didn't have any friends. When he was lonely, it was good to have a yellow dog as a companion. He begged Madame He to let Mao stay in the residence. Mao gave birth to a litter of puppies. However, the weather was too cold. Other than Air Mao, none of them survived. The one that survived, Air Mao, was a mute. He Rufei removed all traces of He Yen. He Yen thought that he would never see Air Mao again. He didn't expect to see it again. However, Air Mao usually lived in the backyard and caught mice to eat. It wasn't that He Rufei didn't want to get rid of it, but that he had forgotten about it. It seems like it recognized me. He Yen looked at Air Mao, who was wagging its tail happily at him. He sighed, I was classmates with you, Lin Shuanghe, and Yen He for so long. You didn't recognize me. Your eyesight is not as good as Air Mao's. Air Mao foolishly stuck its tongue out at He Yen and smiled. Xiaoju closed her eyes and said patiently, now is not the time for you to reunite and reminisce. I know. He Yen gestured to Air Mao to sit down. The yellow dog obediently sat down. Air Mao, you stay here and keep watch for me. She turned to Xiaoju and said, come with me. The He residence was very big. He Yen walked very cautiously. Everywhere he went, he would hide in the dark to see if there were any servants around. Although she didn't enter the He residence a few days ago, she secretly wandered around the outside of the He residence. The number of servants in the He residence was much more than when she was still here. She didn't need to think to know that it was He Rufei's doing. Maybe He Rufei thought that the He residence had more servants, so he could maintain the image of General Feihong. Or maybe he had a guilty conscience. The courtyard that He Rufei lived in was also the courtyard that He Yen used to live in. It was the deepest and most innermost room in the He residence. Xiaoju asked in a low voice, why is it so far away? Because young master, he was born ugly and eccentric. He Yen said, he doesn't like to interact too much with others. There were very few servants in her courtyard, and it was very secluded. If He Yen was a quiet child, it would be fine. But children always had many fantasies. She was originally lively and curious about everything. Because of her identity, she could only stay in the courtyard and play by herself. After a long time, even if she wasn't eccentric, she was raised to be eccentric. As a child, she couldn't do this or that. Even the servant girls couldn't serve her, let alone play with her. After a long time, she would find fun for herself. For example, she used a tree branch to draw pictures in the sand. She could accurately draw every room in the He residence because she had walked through it thousands of times in her mind. He Yen had once suspected that after she joined the army, the reason why she was always so sensitive to the terrain and had a photographic memory was actually because of the experience she had when she was young. There are changes in the structure of the residence. He Yen said in a low voice, we have to be careful. It was already very late at night. The people on night watch were all in the outer courtyard. There were no movements in the residence, so they could be a little more at ease. Seeing that they were about to reach He Rufei's courtyard, He Yen became more and more nervous. When they turned into a long corridor and were about to walk forward, He Yan's footsteps paused. Suddenly, she quietly pulled Xiao Ju into an empty tea room. Xiao Ju was about to speak when He Yen covered her mouth. "Sure, there's someone here." There was the sound of footsteps outside. It was probably a servant who went to the outhouse at night. The footsteps passed by the door and the sound gradually faded away. When there was no more sound outside, He Yen let out a sigh of relief. When she turned her head, she was stunned. The moon had come out at some point. It shone through the window and shone on the ground. Xiao Ju was pushed to the wall by her, his back against it. He Yen was so nervous that her whole body was almost lying on top of him, but he didn't move at all. His hands were slightly behind him, as if he was deliberately avoiding her. He Yen covered his mouth, looking like a female hooligan who was molesting others. She was shocked and subconsciously retracted her hand. The young man looked at her indifferently. Suddenly, he curved his lips and said silently, "Are you taking advantage of me?" He Yen almost choked. She shook her head. No, I was too anxious just now. I didn't do it on purpose." The young man nodded with a faint smile. His eyes clearly showed that he didn't believe her. He Yen couldn't say anything. Anyway, it wasn't the first time she molested Xiao Ju. She didn't care if it was just 1 or 2 times. She glanced outside through the door. Seeing that there was no one, she whispered, "Let's go." Chapter 224. Other than the servant who woke up in the middle of the night to use the toilet, the rest of the journey was smooth and they did not meet anyone else. He Yen carefully walked to the door of a room and whispered in Xiao Ju's ear, "This is He Rufei's study room." So this was He Yan's study room. But now it was He Rufei's study room. After walking around and finding no other hidden mechanisms, He Yen gently pushed the door open and walked in. This was the place where he lived, so he was very familiar with it. Xiao Ju followed him in. As soon as they entered, He Yen was surprised. The bookshelves were still the same as before, and the table was the same as before. But the decorations in the study room were many times more than before. There were all kinds of porcelain and antiques. It was completely different from when He Yen lived in the past. She guessed that He Rufei probably put all the things that His Majesty gave him in the study room. She did not know who he was showing them off to. The bookshelves were originally half filled with books, but now they were full. In the middle of the wall, there was a sword hanging. The blade of the sword was green and the scabbard had a bit of green color. It was Qinglang. She was stunned for a moment, and her eyes unconsciously focused on the Qinglang sword. She wanted to reach out for the sword, but when her fingers were about to touch the blade, she retracted her hand. Xiao Ju asked, "What's wrong?" He Yen shook his head. "Now is not the time." Even if she could steal the Qinglang sword back tonight, He Rufei would definitely report it to the officials tomorrow. The sword in her hand would become a stolen property, and she would not be able to show it in public. Wouldn't this be an insult to the Qinglang sword? So, now is not the time. He Yen thought for a moment, got up and walked to the bookshelf. He squatted down and half of his body was on the ground. He reached into the innermost part of the bookshelf and felt around. When he touched a familiar bulge, the hidden compartment made a slight click sound. It was actually an empty compartment. He Yen took out a small palm-sized box from the compartment. Xiao Ju asked, "What is this?" "Exquisite box." He Yen replied in a low voice, "Back then, His Majesty gave me a reward. This is the only one in the world. After I left, I gave it to He Rufei. I don't think he was willing to throw it away." The hidden compartment on the bookshelf was made by He Yen in the past. This exquisite box was also very precious. Before she married into the Su family, she couldn't take these things with her, so she gave them all to He Rufei. The jewel box was very suitable for storing secret scrolls. Even the most outstanding craftsman in the world would not be able to open it. Only the person who had set up the opening method for the jewel box would know how to open it. Moreover, the way to solve the problem could only be set up once. With He Rufei's temperament, he wouldn't throw away such a precious item. What's more, from He Rufei's point of view, He Yen was already dead, and he was the only one in the world who knew how to open the exquisite box, so of course he was happy and relaxed. However, he did not expect that He Yen would come back from the dead. This time, it was actually more convenient for him to do things. I don't know what he put inside, He Yen said in his heart. He picked up the exquisite box, and according to his memory, he gently turned the lock on the blind man's door. In just a moment, with a pa sound, the lid of the exquisite box opened. The two of them looked into the box. In He Er-Foran's room, He Xining and He Er-Foran sat at the head of the bed. In her hand, she was still holding the military book that she stole from He Yan's old residence. She asked, "Mother, what is this? Did my sister leave it behind? Why did she keep this?" Her voice was very low. In the room, there was only a small oil lamp at the head of the bed. The servant girls were all chased out of the room. He Xining only knew that she hadn't seen her mother for a long time, and wanted to sleep with her at night so that she could take care of her. Now, she didn't dare to trust anyone, and didn't dare to keep anyone by her side, especially the people who were brought out by the Su family. He Er-Foran stared blankly at the military book in her hand. There were traces of tears in her eyes, but she didn't say anything. He Xining felt that her mother must know something, and her heart became even more anxious. "Mother, why aren't you saying anything? Are you hiding something from me? I always feel that Su Zhiheng is strange." Older sister? She wanted to say that perhaps He Yan's death wasn't as the rumors said, but when she saw He Er-Foran, she swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. If He Yan's death was really not simple, He Er-Foran would be even more sad when she found out. Right now, her mother's health was not good, so she couldn't make things worse. Don't worry about these things. After a long time, He Er-Foran opened her mouth. Her voice was particularly tired. "You just need to live your life well." "How can I live my life well? I don't want to die like my elder sister without knowing why." He Xining blurted out. As soon as the words came out of her mouth, she regretted it. He Er-Foran's face turned pale and she coughed twice. He Xining quickly picked up the handkerchief next to her and wiped her mouth. When the handkerchief fell down, it was splashed with blood, which looked shocking. He Xining was shocked and said in a panic, "Mother, why are you so sick?" When she came, she already knew that He Er-Foran had been bedridden for many days, but the He family only said that it was a common cold and that she would be fine after resting at home for a few days. But now it seemed that it was much more serious. "Father, didn't you find a doctor? What the hell is going on?" He Xining was anxious and wanted to get out of bed. "I'll ask someone to bring an invitation to invite a doctor." "Don't go." Madam, he grabbed her hand. She looked like a weak woman, but when she grabbed her hand, she was particularly strong, as if she wanted to use up all her strength. "Mother, this is an old problem. It doesn't matter. It's okay." He Xining was about to cry, "Mother, why won't you tell me anything? I feel that there's something in the house that's hiding from me, but I don't know anything." Before she got married, she was carefree and naive. When her eldest sister passed away and she married Su Zhiheng, she made a fuss for a period of time. But soon, she was moved by Su Zhiheng's gentleness and thoughtfulness. As a girl who had never experienced the dangers of the world, she naively thought that she could be protected for the rest of her life. But when some ugly truth was revealed, she vaguely glimpsed a trace of filth and danger, then she felt powerless as a woman. He Er-Foran said slowly, "Your eldest sister is dead, and mother only has you as a daughter." She looked at He Xining lovingly and patted He Xining's head comfortingly, just like when He Xining was still a child. "You have to remember, whether it's the He family or the Su family, don't trust a single person. Mother doesn't have the ability to protect your sister, and I can't protect you. If you want to live well, then don't look, don't ask, and don't listen." He Xining said blankly, "My eldest sister became blind not long after she married into the Su family. Didn't she lose her sight? But she still died." A trace of pain flashed through He Er's eyes. "Mother, you just need to tell me, did my eldest sister leave this military book behind? Why does Su Zhiheng value it so much? Also, eldest brother comes to the Su family every few days, not to see me, but to look for Su Zhiheng. And you..." She said, Are you under house arrest by father? He looked at the woman in front of her. Although they were biological sisters, she always felt that He Yen and He Xining didn't look alike. He Yen was strong, independent, silent and quiet. She wore a mask since she was a child, so now that she thought about it, she couldn't remember He Yan's appearance when he was a child. But when she grew up and returned to the He family as a woman, she only saw him a few times. He was a girl who was born with a heroic spirit and had a resolute and courageous appearance. He Xining was different. She was soft and cuddly, like a snow-white dumpling, and was very likable. She would cry when someone stepped on her foot and act coquettishly for a beautiful dress. These two daughters had completely different temperaments, so she took it for granted that He Yen was born strong, and He Xining was born to be loved. Until He Yen died. One day she suddenly realized that perhaps in the past, He Yen was just like He Xining. They would cry when they were wronged, and they would yearn to have something they liked. Just like a strong girl would also need her mother's care and love. And the little girl in front of her, who always grabbed her clothes and clamored to buy candy, had unknowingly grown up. He Xining didn't know that when she was serious and stubborn in pursuit of the truth, she was very similar to her dead eldest sister. But even so, she still couldn't say anything. The more she knew, the more dangerous it would be for He Xining. She had already lost a daughter, she couldn't lose another one. Before Madame he could say anything, she suddenly heard someone shouting from outside, "There's a thief! A thief has entered the residence. Quickly catch the thief!" Immediately, the entire He family became lively. A thief? He Xining subconsciously shrank to the head of the bed and said, "Which thief is so blind that he dares to enter our residence?" Madame he grabbed her arm, "Don't talk and don't go out. Be careful." He Xining nodded. On the other side, He Yen was running around the courtyard with Xiao Ju, secretly cursing He Rufei for being cunning. Although He Rufei couldn't make any changes in the way of opening the exquisite box, this person was very suspicious and actually installed a layer of mechanism inside the box. Once the exquisite box was opened, there would be a whistling sound. In this way, as long as someone opened the exquisite box, they would be discovered. However, when she opened it just now, she clearly saw that there were a few letters inside. She put the letters into her bosom. Since He Rufei didn't leave the exquisite box empty and even deliberately tampered with it, these letters must be very important. Today's trip wasn't considered to be in vain. The bodyguards are all awake. Xiao Ju reminded her, "Do we run or fight? I'm carrying your sword. Once the sword is unsheathed, it will be exposed. We can't fight." He Yen looked down and thought, "Come with me." She knew every corner of the He family's courtyard by heart, so it was easy to avoid people. But she didn't know if it was because He Rufei was very guilty these days. There were more bodyguards than servants in the residence. At this moment, when the whistle sounded, torches and people came from all directions. "They're over there, Chase. The general said that if we catch the assassin, we don't need to leave him alive. Life or death." He Yen sneered in her heart. Unexpectedly, she was so scared. She was even more sure that the letters in her bosom were not simple. She pulled Xiao Ju and ran all the way. When they passed by a house, she hid inside. Madame he was pulling He Xining to lean against the head of the bed. She was very nervous as she hugged the quilt. Unexpectedly, there were two more people in the room. He Xining was so scared that she was about to scream. The next moment, a cold sword was placed on her neck. The masked man in black said, "Shut up. If you dare to scream, I'll kill you." He Xining was so scared that she immediately shut up. He Yen held the long sword in her hand. She was very annoyed. She originally thought that since Madame He's courtyard was the closest to the outer wall, it would be easy to pass through. Who knew that Madame He was still awake in the middle of the night? He Xining was also here. It was so late at night. What was she doing here instead of sleeping? Were the mother and daughter whispering to each other? He Yan's heart immediately gave birth to a sour taste, but what was this now? She was holding her biological mother and biological sister hostage? Perhaps the commotion inside had spread to the outside, as a maidservant outside asked, "Second, madam?" Did something happen to second madam? He Yan's heart skipped a beat. Before she could threaten her, madam, he had already spoken. Her tone was normal. It's nothing. It's just a little cough. He Yan breathed a sigh of relief when there was no more noise outside. She looked at Xiaoju behind her. She was vigilantly staring at the door to prevent anyone from rushing in. Listen, He Yan said in a low voice, I don't mean to hurt the two of you. Give me the key to the backyard and let the two of us go. He Xining said in a trembling voice, Who knows if you'll kill us to keep us quiet? He Yan was a little surprised. His sister looked so obedient, but he didn't expect her to be so brave. She deliberately lowered her voice and said in a sinister voice, Do you think you have the right to talk terms with me? He Xining's face turned pale. She didn't dare to speak. On the other hand, Madam He ignored the sword on He Xining's neck. She got off the bed and took out a key from the drawer. She handed it to her and said, You can leave now. He Yan was very surprised. He thought that Madam He would also talk terms with her, or find a way to inform the He family. He Yan was even prepared to be on guard. But he didn't expect her to be so peaceful. He Yan couldn't help but look at her. The woman in front of him was staring at him. He Yan couldn't understand her gaze. She seemed to be looking at He Yan, but also seemed to be looking at another person through He Yan. If He Yan didn't know that he was wearing a black mask, he would have suspected that Madam He had recognized him. Seeing that He Yan didn't move, Madam He pushed her again. The bodyguards will come soon. Let's go. Xiaoju nodded to her and said, Let's go. He Yan didn't care about anything else. She grabbed the key to the backyard and turned to leave. The moment she passed by, she suddenly felt something stuffed in her hand. She didn't have time to look at it carefully. She subconsciously put the thing in her hand into her arms, took the key, opened the door of the backyard, and ran out. Madam He was right. The pursuers would be here in a blink of an eye. They came through the dog hole, but they didn't have time to go back. Since they were exposed, they directly went through the back wall. Just as the guard was about to chase after them, he suddenly felt a pain in his knee. Looking down, he saw a yellow dog biting his calf. The pain made him wail like a ghost and howl like a wolf. Unable to catch up, he could only watch as the two black-clothed men disappeared into the night. The entire residence was in chaos. He Xining finally managed to calm herself down with great difficulty. She reignited the lamp on the table and patted her chest as she said, I was really scared to death just now. That person's eyes were so fierce. I was really afraid that he would kill us. Mother, if Uncle knew that we let the assassins go, even if it was to save his life, he would be angry. If no one found out about this, let's not tell anyone for the time being. Mother? Madam He just stared at her hands blankly, as if she didn't hear what she just said. He Xining said anxiously, Mother. Madam He came back to her senses and looked at her. I know. Don't tell anyone about this. Don't tell Master Su either. He Xining felt strange. His mother's expression when she saw the men in black was very strange. Then she thought of something, but did those two men really come to steal something? I saw that they were empty-handed, so they didn't steal anything. My military book? By the way, where is my military book? When she was talking to second Madam He on the bed, the military book was placed at the head of the bed. Now that it was empty, He Xining was startled. Oh no, those two couldn't have stolen my military book, right? But why did they steal it? Mother, did you see my military book? Madam He coughed and said, No need to look for it. I gave the military book to the men in black just now. Why? He Xining didn't expect that Madam He would do such a thing. That thing will be a disaster in our hands. Madam He looked empty. Those two men came to steal, but they were empty-handed. I don't know if they stole what they wanted to steal. If they stole it, it would be the icing on the cake. If they didn't, it would be a timely help. They didn't take the risk to come to the He family in vain. Mother, He Xining said angrily, how can it be like that? It was difficult for me to get that thing from the Su family. Remember, Madam He's expression became serious. Whether it's the assassins tonight or the military book of the Su family, don't mention it to anyone. He Xining originally came to solve his doubts. Now that he didn't understand the mystery, there were more and more things he didn't understand, But he couldn't do anything. In the end, he could only say, "I know. I won't mention it to anyone." Fei Nu was outside, so when he received He Yen and Madame He, the three of them immediately hid in another courtyard. "Where is this place?" He Yen asked curiously. "I'm in another courtyard in Shuo City. Sometimes it's inconvenient to do things in the mansion, so I'll do it here," Xiao Ju replied. He Yen thought for a moment and understood. Xiao Jing and Madame He were very kind. Xiao Ju's experience meant that his actions wouldn't be understood by most people. This was good. If they couldn't see it, it would save them a lot of trouble. He Yen took out the letter from the exquisite box and showed it to Xiao Ju, showing off. "Look, this trip is very fruitful. I already said that going to the He family would definitely make a profit." Xiao Ju glanced at her and said, "It's very dangerous. It's only this time, don't do it again." She paused and said, "Starting tomorrow, He Rufei will use this as an excuse to search the entire Shuo city. You should stay at home for the next few days and don't act rashly. If these letters are lost, the first person He Rufei will suspect is me. I'm afraid it will implicate you." "It's okay. I'm Marquis Wu and personally appointed by His Majesty. If he can't produce evidence, he can't do anything to me." He Yen couldn't wait to open the letter. "Let's see what's in the letter first." He Rufei hid it so well. I don't believe it's a love poem. There were a total of 3 letters. He Yen and Xiao Ju opened each letter. It wasn't long, but after reading it, both of their expressions changed. "Bastard." He Yen put down the letter in his hand and couldn't help but punch the table. There's actually such a heartless person in the world. Of the 3 letters, 2 were for Yuto and 1 was for Su Jingfu. Although He Yen guessed that He Rufei might have a relationship with Su Jingfu when he saw He Rufei's servant Ding Yi in Liangzhou City, he didn't have any evidence. The letter in front of him clearly stated in black and white that this was indeed the case. He Rufei really did make a deal with the Yuto after the battle in Huayuan. He Rufei gave the Fuyue army's military intelligence to the Yudo and purposely won a bitter victory. The price was to establish a relationship with Prime Minister Su and express his sincerity in cooperating with Su Jingfu. He would also advocate for peace when the Yudo emissary came to the capital to ask for peace and facilitate the Yudo to open a market in Dawei. He Rufei's greatest fear was that his identity would be exposed and that the world would find out that he was different from the General Fei Hong of the past. But in order to hide his identity, he actually colluded with the enemy and betrayed the country. He didn't care about the lives of the people of Dawei. Xiao Ju looked at the letter in her hand. It was troublesome for He Rufei to establish a relationship with Su Jingfu. Su Jingfu was the most powerful person among the civil officials. Most of the civil officials were in favor of peace and only a few generals were in favor of war. However, General Fei Hong had always had a good reputation among the generals. If He Rufei was in favor of peace, the generals who were in favor of war would be few and far between. He Yen took a deep breath. Once such a shameless person enters the officialdom, he becomes even worse. He just has to use my name. It's really disgusting. "Don't worry," Xiao Ju said calmly, "I'll take care of everything." He Yen suddenly remembered that when she left the Heichi estate, Madame He stuffed something into her hand. But at that time, the situation was critical and she didn't have time to take a closer look. She just put it in her pocket. Now that she finally had time, she took it out of her pocket. It was a book. The pages were wrinkled and yellowed from being used for a long time. The corners of the book were all curled up. This book had probably been read many times, and the pages were very thin. As soon as He Yen opened it, he was stunned. Xiao Ju stood behind her, her gaze also falling on the book. "This is my military book?" He Yen muttered. She lowered her head and flipped through a few pages. Yes, it was her handwriting. Ever since she joined the army in her previous life, she had read many military books. She read the most precious books repeatedly and wrote her own notes and notes at the side. Later, when she got married, everything related to General Fei Hong had to be abandoned. She couldn't take her sword, her war horse, and her trusted subordinates. In the end, He Yen secretly hid a military book in her dowry box and brought it to the Su estate. In front of others, she was dignified and gentle. She was no different from an ordinary woman. But in private, she missed the days when she was free on the battlefield. Every time her fingers touched the book, she would think of her comrades who had gone through fire and water with her in the army camp. She hid this military book under the bedpost where she slept. Now she found it again. Chapter 225. The military book was still the same as before, and it reminded Hien of the time when she had just married into the He family. But after she became blind, she never took the military book out again. She thought that the book was either never found or burned by Su Zhiheng. She didn't expect that it would return to her. But how did the book end up in the hands of He family's second wife? What do you think my mother means by giving me this book? Hien looked at Xiaoju. Could it be that she recognized me? Without waiting for Xiaoju to speak, Hien immediately shook her head in denial. That's impossible. Even in my previous life, the number of times I met her could be counted on one hand. What I looked like, my mother probably doesn't even remember clearly, let alone mention it now. She laughed self-deprecatingly. Why am I starting to let my imagination run wild now? But when she recalled the moment when He family's second wife stuffed the military book into her hands, she vaguely caught a hint of longing and reluctance in her eyes. How was that possible? He family's second wife had another daughter. Compared to her, He Xining had been with her since she was a child, and she was the real pearl in her mother's palm. Unlike her, she had never even called her mother. Hien always thought that when facing the He family, her heart was as hard as iron. But when she rushed into He family's second wife's room, she saw He Xining and her mother sleeping on the same bed. Even after she got married, she could still talk to her mother intimately at night. It turned out that she was jealous. Thinking about it carefully, in her previous life, her family had always been very weak. Her parents were like that, and her husband was like that. Although it was already a matter of her previous life, and although she had people by her side now, there were some regrets that she couldn't make up for in her life. It was like a hole covered by sand, and when the wind blew, it was still empty. It was a shocking sight. Hien didn't want Xiaoju to see her disappointment, so she changed the topic. However, this military book just solved my urgent problem. He Rufei could also use the excuse that the handwriting had changed after a long time had passed since the handwriting was found in the Xianchang dojo. As long as I carefully compare He Rufei's current handwriting, I will be able to find some clues. Moreover, it just so happens that it is a military book. Heaven is helping me. Xiaoju nodded. The correspondence with Yudo will come in handy when the time is right. He Rufei must have kept these letters because he was afraid that Yudo and Su Xiang would burn the bridge after crossing the river, so he deliberately hid them in the exquisite box just in case. Hien pondered. I really don't know if I should call him cunning or stupid. It was precisely because of his paranoia that his weakness fell into the hands of others. It's not safe for me to keep this. Hien thought for a while and said to Xiaoju, you should keep it. No matter how daring He Rufei is, he won't dare to go to Xiao family and behave atrociously. She raised her head and looked at the sky. It won't be long before dawn. Today she was delayed for a whole night. I have to go back. When dawn comes, He Rufei will send people to search the entire Shu'a capital. I'm afraid that something will happen. I'll send you back. Hien nodded. Although she tried to pretend as usual, the matter of Madame He still weighed heavily on her heart. Although at that time, no one knew that she wanted to force Madame He to open the door for her, but who knew if He Rufei would suspect Madame He? Even if she was from the He family. He Rufei was so cruel and merciless to her. So what if she was Madame He? He Yuanliang didn't care about the relationship between father and daughter. How much of the relationship between husband and wife would there be left? Don't worry, I will send people to sneak into the He family and watch over Madame He. As if he saw her worry, he said, I won't let anything happen to her. Hien raised her head and looked at him. She was slightly relieved. Then, thank you very much. Even so, she still looked a little unhappy. Xiaoju's eyes lightly swept over her and said, Hien. What? It's my birthday in 2 days. Hien said, oh. She suddenly reacted and raised her head. Then what do you want? I can buy it for you. Do you have money? He asked. Didn't you give me a banknote last time? He Yen answered very smoothly. When she saw his expression, she laughed embarrassedly, as if it was wrong to use someone else's money to buy a gift for someone else. But I only have the money you gave me. I'm not a good embroidery woman. It's impossible for me to embroider a handkerchief in 1 or 2 days. Why didn't you say so earlier? It's too late for me to do it now. How about I go pick up a piece of shirtu for you and use an axe to chop it into a shape you like? When they were in the Liang province guards, Chu Zhao didn't sleep in the middle of the night just to pick up shirtu. Perhaps all rich young masters had this kind of strange hobby. Xiao Ju's face darkened, as if he was thinking of a bad memory. No need. Then what do you need? He Yen moved closer to him and asked. After being interrupted by Xiao Ju, her depressed mood eased a lot. At least for now, she was sincerely worried about young Master Zhao's birthday gift. I want to go to the night market. Xiao Ju glanced at her. Take the banknotes with you. If I like something, buy it for me. Now He Yen understood. Second young Master Xiao wanted to enjoy the feeling of being pampered. But this kind of thing was usually done by men accompanying women to the night market, buying flowers, jade, pearls and hairpins for the women. Why was it reversed when it came to Xiao Ju? I didn't expect you to have this kind of weird hobby, He Yen muttered behind her back. What did you say? Xiao Ju raised an eyebrow. He Yen turned around and answered with a smile. I said, since it's our young master's birthday wish, even if we have to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire, we will fulfill it for you. Isn't it just going to the night market? I'll take all the banknotes with me and buy you whatever you want. How about it? The girl's face was so close that she didn't seem to notice that she was too close to the other person. Xiao Ju tilted her head slightly and the corners of her mouth lifted slightly as she said, okay. By the time Xiao Ju sent He Yen back to the Fu, it was already very late. He Yen decided to go to bed and catch up on sleep. When he woke up, it was already noon. Qing Mei had finished preparing lunch. He Yen rubbed his sleepy eyes and sat at the table. He picked up his chopsticks and asked, Qing Mei, did anything happen outside today? Qing Mei was helping He Yen ladle some soup. Hearing this, she asked in surprise, Miss, how did you know that something happened outside? This servant saw that you were sleeping soundly, so I didn't dare to wake you up. When I went out to buy groceries, I heard that General Fei Hong's residence was robbed last night. Some valuable objects were stolen from General Fei Hong's residence. Now the city gates have been sealed and the authorities are searching for suspicious people. After saying this, she continued to mutter, but how can there be such a daring thief in this world? He actually dared to steal from General Fei Hong's residence. Isn't he seeking his own death? What she didn't know was that the daring thief was sitting at the table, calmly drinking the hot soup in his bowl. Hien only needed to think about how flustered He Rufei was right now. His heart was overjoyed and he even wanted to drink a few more bowls of soup. Thinking about it, with He Rufei's suspicious personality, for a long time to come, no, it should be said that as long as those letters were not found, He Rufei would be on pins and needles and would not be able to sleep at night. It really was very satisfying. He Yan's guess was not wrong. At this moment, the entire He Fu was in a mess. From last night until now, all the suspicious people in the Shuo capital had been investigated, but there was still no news of them. He Rufei's expression was very ugly. The servants did not dare to provoke him at this critical moment. Rufei, what should we do now? He Yuanxing was very nervous. For He Rufei to go through so much trouble to find the lost object at all costs, he had already guessed a little. If this thing fell into someone else's hands, it would be a fatal weakness, not to mention in the current situation. Father, don't you think it strange? He Rufei coldly said, the person who came in and out of the Fu as if there was no one there. He knows everything about the Fu like the back of his hand. He even knows the secret in my study room and can open the exquisite box. You're saying that there's a spy in the Fu? He Yuanxing asked. Not necessarily. He Rufei said. But right now, all the servants in the Fu are children of the house. Moreover, other than you, no one can enter your study room, not to mention the secret compartment in the bookshelf. If there's a spy, who could it be? Could it be? He Yuanxing's eyes narrowed. You suspect it's your second uncle? He doesn't have the guts or the brains. He Rufei's eyes flashed with a trace of disdain. He Yuanliang was even more useless now, so when there was something to discuss in the Fu, He Rufei was too lazy to call him. He Yuanliang was also happy to be relaxed. He wasn't someone who could handle things. The only useful thing he did in his life was to raise He Yen, his daughter. Other than that, he was a piece of trash. Then you suspect. Second uncle doesn't have the guts, but second aunt might not. Because of He Yan's matter, I'm afraid she already has a grudge against us. Women have always been emotional. Who knows if she won't hold a grudge and do something unexpected? He Yuansheng frowned. If that's the case, then we can't keep this woman. He Rufei shook his head. We can't act rashly now. If it's really her, then it'll be easy to deal with. At least we can follow the clues to find the mastermind behind the scenes. Moreover, we have more hostages in our hands, so it'll be easier to do things in the future. But won't there be trouble if we keep her? As long as we don't let her leave the Fu and leave someone to watch over her, then there's no harm in keeping her alive. He Rufei coldly said, it's just that He Xining also returned to the Fu last night. On the day he returned, a thief broke into the Fu. I don't know if it's a coincidence. He Xining? He Yuanxing's face darkened. She's a member of the He family. How dare she? It's just a suspicion, He Rufei interrupted her. Find someone to get close to her and see if she really doesn't know anything. If second aunt wants to protect He Xining, then she probably won't tell her the truth. It's just that Su Zhiheng has been acting a bit strange recently. Thinking of Su Zhiheng, He Rufei felt a wave of displeasure. Working with this kind of idiot was probably the most annoying thing. Leave this to me, He Yuanxing pondered for a moment. You stay in the Fu and wait for news. He got up and left. After He Yuanxing left, He Rufei sat alone in a chair. His thoughts were hard to calm down. Just as He Yuanxing said, his first thought was that there was a traitor in the Fu. That's why he knew the Fu like the back of his hand. But he clearly knew that the hidden compartment on the bookshelf in the study wasn't something a traitor could find. There was also the exquisite box. When He Yen handed the exquisite box to him, he once said that in this world, other than him and his sister, no one else could open this box. Later, He Yen died. In this world, only he could open it. That's why He Rufei put a few secret letters in the box. Just to make himself feel more at ease, he added another layer of mechanism to the box. The reason was that he would never encounter this mechanism in his life. He didn't expect to hear a whistle last night. The exquisite box was opened. Either He Yen was lying at that time, and other than the two of them, there was a third person in this world who knew how to open this box. Or, Su Zhiheng's terrified expression floated in front of his eyes. His voice was filled with indescribable panic. It's a Yen. She's back, 'tis back. But He Rufei suddenly swept the teacup on the table to the ground. He stood up and looked at the long sword on the wall. The sword was green and serene, emitting a faint luster. The corner of his mouth twitched. She's back. He wasn't afraid. The next day, the news of a thief in General Fei Hong's Fu spread like wildfire. But no one was able to find the thief. The entire Shuojing city was in chaos. He Yen had a rare day of relaxation. He only drank tea and slept at home. Qing Mei was a little surprised. 2 days later, the sky turned dark early. There was no snow outside, and it was a rare sunny night. After He Yen finished washing up, he planned to go out with Xiaoju. Previously, after visiting the He estate that night, Xiaoju had told her that today was his birthday and wanted He Yen to accompany him to the night market. They agreed to meet at the entrance of the house. He Yen estimated that it was getting late and should be going out. Qing Mei picked out a silver-red embroidered shirt for her and a smoky silk brocade dress of the same color for her. She also meticulously combed her hair into a bun, with the tail of the ponytail hanging over her shoulders. It made her look even cuter. He Yen scrutinized her in front of the mirror and felt a little uncomfortable. This dress is a little too flashy. Today is Xiaoju's birthday, not mine. Why is there a need to be so grand? Qin Mei put a pair of coral earrings on her ears and smiled. But miss, you're going to the night market with Military Governor Xiao. There are so many people at the night market, they'll definitely recognize the two of you. Of course it has to be grand. After all, you're going out to show off. He Yen stopped her from continuing to insert hairpins into his hair. Alright, that's fine. I think it's about time. I'll leave first. After saying this, she went to take the rabbit fur cloak that was placed on top of the trunk. This cloak was originally from Lady He's trunk. Among all of her clothes, this was the only one that looked a little plain. Lady He probably didn't like this cloak, so it was placed under the trunk. However, this was the warmest cloak that He Yen could find. Speaking of which, when he first woke up, He Yen saw that eldest Mrs. Body was so weak that a gust of wind could blow her over. However, her trunk was filled with clothes that were as thin as cicadas' wings. It was as if winter had never passed. He Yen picked up the cloak and was about to put it on when Qin Mei snatched it away. What are you doing? She was puzzled. Miss, you can just wear this. Don't take this cloak. Qin Mei looked at the rabbit fur cloak in her hand. This one is very old. It looks a little bloated. Under the lights at night, it won't suit you. He Yen was speechless for a moment. But I'll be cold if I don't wear it. If I go out in this dress, I'll freeze to death. I can't disregard my body just to look good, right? However, Qin Mei, who was usually easy to talk to, was very persistent today. No, Mississippi. Between looking good and being cold, of course looking good is more important. Moreover, if you wear warm clothes, what will Military Governor Xiao do? What do you mean? Think about it. Qin Mei patiently guided him. Didn't the two of you go to the night market? Military Governor Xiao will definitely wear an outer garment. Miss, the colder you are, the more delicate you look and need someone to take care of you. When Military Governor Xiao sees this, his heart will ache and he will take off his outer garment for you to wear. It will definitely be beneficial for your relationship. When He Yen heard this, he said in disbelief, what kind of fallacious reasoning is this? If he gives me his outer garment, won't he also be cold? So one of us will have to freeze to death. What kind of hatred and resentment does he have? How can this be called fallacious reasoning? Qin Mei spoke with conviction. Most men in the world will take pity on weak and delicate women. Miss, if you do everything yourself, how will Military Governor Xiao realize that you need to be taken care of? You don't believe me. This is what bodyguard Qi Wu told me personally. Since he is a man and is also the Military Governor Xiao's personal attendant, he must know the Military Governor Xiao very well. Just do as he says, you won't go wrong. He Yen, was Qi Wu crazy? Why did he spend all day thinking about this instead of doing other things? Qin Mei, a good girl, had been led astray. Was Xiao Ju the kind of person who would take pity on women? Back when he was hunting in the mountains, many young women came to watch in thin clothes. There were at least 8, if not 10, girls who pounced on Xiao Ju. He also didn't see Xiao Ju giving his mink coat to anyone. That's all nonsense. Nonsense. Qin Mei pushed He Yen towards the door. In any case, miss, you can't wear this rabbit fur cloak today. Just listen to this servant this time. With a bang, the door was closed, almost hitting He Yen's nose. He Yen didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the door. However, it was getting late. If He Yunxing came back from school and found out that He Yen went out with Xiao Ju in the middle of the night, there would be a lot of noise. He Yen thought about it and decided that it was fine. Her body had withstood the wind and rain of the Liang province guards. She was also very sturdy and wouldn't fall from a single gust of wind. In this way, she should be fine for the night. Thinking of this, he stepped out of the door. Coincidentally, as soon as he stepped out of the door, a carriage stopped in front of the door. Fei Nu was already very good at being the coachman. Xiao Ju stepped out of the carriage. Today, he was wearing a dark blue embroidered python robe with a black fox fur cloak and a sandalwood hairpin. His ink-black hair hung down to his shoulders, making him look especially elegant and beautiful. When he looked over, the light from the lanterns made his nose bridge very straight, his thin lips distinct, and his eyes were as moving as autumn waters. He Yen swallowed his saliva. In fact, with his looks, if he stood here with Xiao Ju, he was afraid that he wouldn't be the one who would be protective of the fairer sex. Qin Mei was worrying too much. Chapter 226. He Yen walked in front of Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju glanced at her and frowned. Why are you wearing such thin clothes? It's too hot. He Yen clenched his teeth and swallowed his blood. He cursed Qi Wu in his heart, but he still pretended as if nothing had happened. He fanned himself with his hand and said, I don't know why, but I keep feeling a little hot. Xiao Ju was about to take off her cloak, but He Yen quickly stopped her. There's really no need. If I feel cold, I'll go back and get another set of clothes. The reason why I'm wearing this is because it's too hot. Haven't you heard Lin Shuanghe talk about it? Sometimes people feel hot. If you wear too much, it won't dispel the stuffiness in your body. It's easy to get sick. She made up a story. Xiao Ju stared at her suspiciously. He Yen grabbed her arm. Alright, don't worry about what I wear. Let's go to the East Market first. I'm afraid we'll miss out on some interesting places. In Shu'a capital, the markets were prosperous. They were divided into the East Market, West Market, South Market, and North Market. The most prosperous one was the East Market, which was near the city god temple. The East Market was divided into the December Market, the Lunar Market, the February Flower Market, the March Silkworm Market, the April Jean Market, the May Fan Market, the June Fragrance Market, the July Treasure Market, the August Osmanthus Market, the September Medicine Market, the October Wine Market, the November Plum Market, and the December Tofu Market. It was the end of November and the beginning of December. The plum market had already closed. There were only a few stalls selling piles of red plum blossoms. The tofu market had already opened. Everywhere, there were stalls selling spring festival couplets. Everywhere they went, they would see people crowding around, cheering, clapping, and praising. It was very lively. Because it was almost the end of the year, the lantern market had also started to light up. The streets were brightly lit and filled with people. It was very festive. He Yen followed Xiao Ju to the entrance of the East Market. He could already feel the bustling crowd. It's too lively. She looked up at the colorful lanterns hanging above her head and couldn't help but exclaim. This is my first time visiting a night market. First time? Xiao Ju turned to look at her. He Yen nodded. That's right. In the past, I couldn't come to places with so many people, so as to avoid exposing myself. Every year, when the He family's younger generation went to the night market together, I was especially envious. When I was in Jiang City, I felt that Jiang City's night market was really fun. I didn't expect Shu'a City's night market to be so good. So beautiful. Her eyes were filled with excitement and joy. She had lived 2 lifetimes, but at this moment, she was as happy as a child. The night market was not a place that only the rich and powerful could come to. Ordinary people could come here to have fun, but this was the first time for this person. Many things that ordinary people took for granted were forbidden to her. The young man looked at the girl beside him with a gentle and tender gaze. The next moment, He Yen had already pulled his sleeve and squeezed in front of a candy man. Candy man! He Yen exclaimed happily. I still remember when I was young, I couldn't go to the night market. I craved it so much that I asked eldest aunt to get someone to buy one for me. I couldn't bear to eat it, so I put it in a pen holder. In the end, it melted everywhere. She turned to look at Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju, do you want to eat it? I'll buy one for you. What do you want? Is this qilin pretty? Or do you prefer phoenixes? Xiao Ju glanced at the candy man on the haystack. No. Why not? He Yen was very generous. I have money, I'll buy it for you. Xiao Ju's gaze shifted from the candy man to her face. Her tone was indifferent. I don't have a flower basket. Flower basket? He Yen was confused. Do you like flower baskets? His tone was as calm as usual, but there was a subtlety in it. When we were in Jiang City, didn't you give Chu Xilin a brown sugar flower basket? How did you know? He Yen was frightened. I just knew. The man raised his eyebrows slightly and turned to walk away. He Yen hurriedly followed. At this moment, he also came back to his senses. Xiao Ju's tone of voice sounded a little displeased. Well, second young master Xiao might be particularly bothered by the fact that he was giving something to his enemy. At that time, he gave me a tassel. He Yen tightly clutched onto his sleeve so as to not get separated from him in the crowd, while trying to curry favor with him to show his loyalty. I also felt that a gift would blind the eyes, so I definitely couldn't owe him a favor, so I gave him a flower basket. You know that in this world, it's the hardest thing to repay a debt. My relationship with you isn't like this. There's no need for us to draw such a clear line. Don't be angry. It's just a trivial matter. Don't take it to heart. Military Governor Xiao is magnanimous. Don't fuss over such trivial matters with me. Military Governor Xiao, second young master. Little young master? Xiao Ju seemed to be annoyed by her pestering. She turned her head away. Her expression was serious, but the corners of her mouth were slightly raised. He Yen could tell that Xiao Ju wasn't as calculative as before. She turned her head and saw a stall selling plain noodles. She pulled him over. It's your birthday today. You should eat a bowl of longevity noodles. Come, I'll treat you. The stall was a couple. They set up an iron pot on the side of the street. The pot was filled with boiling water, and there was flour in a shaving pan. There were jars of salt and vinegar on the small table. A few tables and stools were set up on both sides. This was the stall. He Yen let Xiao Ju sit down first. She ran in front of the lady boss and smiled. A bowl of noodles. She paused, then said, "Today is this young master's birthday." She secretly pointed at Xiao Ju. I'll have to trouble the lady boss to make this bowl of noodles more beautiful. Add an egg, more vegetables, and more braised meat. Oh, it's good to have a drumstick. That's enough, Mississippi, the lady boss smiled. Any more and the bowl won't fit. He Yen nodded. That's all for now. The lady boss smiled as she kneaded the noodles. The young master sitting here must be Mrs. Lover. He's really handsome. He Yan's face turned red. She didn't dare to respond. The lady boss probably didn't know Xiao Ju. She was simply captivated by Xiao Ju's beauty. I've been selling noodles here for so long, but this is the first time I've seen such a handsome young master. Since you two are lovers, why don't we order a bowl of sweet dumplings with sesame fillings? The two of you can eat a bowl of sweet dumplings at the Lantern Market. You two will be lovers for the rest of your life. No need. Tian smiled. This young master doesn't like sweet things. I see. What a pity. The lady boss was still smiling. She didn't try to persuade him. He Yen was about to walk towards Xiao Ju, but after taking 2 steps, he turned back and said to the lady boss, I think I'd better have a bowl. The lady boss smiled sweetly. But when the noodles were served, Xiao Ju stared at the bowl in front of him. He was speechless for a moment. He Yen, are you feeding a pig? The bowl wasn't big, but it was filled to the brim with noodles. There was an egg, emerald green leaves, and a few large pieces of braised meat. It was very sumptuous. Looking at it, the noodles were about to overflow from the bowl. The other bowls were all filled with clear water. Only the bowl in front of Xiao Ju was different. More. He Yen passed him a pair of chopsticks. Since it's your birthday, of course you can't just casually celebrate it. I specially asked the lady boss to put some noodles in for you. It's my treat. Don't be shy. Everyone's eyes fell on their table. This was the first time in Xiao Ju's life that someone looked at him as if he was a rice bucket. However, the girl in front of him held her cheeks with her hands and smiled sincerely. After holding back for a moment, he finally resigned himself to his fate and picked up the longevity noodles in front of him. He Yen was very satisfied. Remember to eat it all. Xiao Ju's chopsticks trembled. He tried his best to maintain a calm expression. At this time, the lady boss's lantern dumplings were served. The dumplings were round and there were exactly 9 of them. They were served in red porcelain bowls and were very pleasing to the eye. The lady boss didn't know if it was intentional or not, but she only gave her a spoon. He Yen lowered her head and scooped one into her mouth. The sesame filling was very sweet. It was very cold when they came out. However, the night market was bustling and crowded, so the cold was dispelled. At this moment, the hot soup in front of him was warm, the dumplings were sweet, and the person sitting opposite him was quietly eating noodles. Suddenly, He Yen felt that the years were peaceful. The days filled with danger, conspiracy, scheming, and saber light seemed very far away in a trance. It was as if the peaceful days in front of him could continue for a long, long time to come. She lowered her head and smiled. She picked up the spoon and obediently ate the dumplings in front of her. She ate a bowl of dumplings and a bowl of longevity noodles very slowly. Perhaps it was He Yan's great hospitality, or perhaps it was because of the lady boss's excellent cooking skills. Xiao Ju finally finished the bowl of noodles. When she put down her chopsticks, He Yen was finishing the 8th dumpling in the bowl. When she was about to scoop up the 9th dumpling, she suddenly remembered what the lady boss said. 2 people eating a bowl of dumplings in the lantern market will be lovers for life. She had always felt that this phrase was far away. However, she didn't know when she started to look forward to it. Xiao Ju saw her hesitation and asked, "What's wrong?" He Yen gently pushed the red porcelain bowl to the center. He raised his head and looked into Xiao Ju's eyes. He coughed softly. "Do you want to eat one too?" Xiao Ju looked down at the bowl of soup with only 1 dumpling left. She didn't say anything. He Yen felt inexplicably guilty. He suddenly felt like he was a demon seducing a good girl. He added, "I remember that you don't like to eat sweet things anymore, forget it." Xiao Ju smiled and didn't say anything. She took the bowl, picked up the spoon that He Yen used and ate the remaining dumpling. The lady boss was cleaning up the table next door. When she saw this, she smiled and said, "Okay, 2 people eating a bowl of dumplings. It's sweet and honeyed. It's a perfect match." He Yen was shocked. He subconsciously looked at Xiao Ju. The young man's beautiful eyes were staring at her. It was as if he had seen through her secret thoughts. He Yen stood up and took out a few copper coins from his pocket. "Well, I've finished eating. Let's go." She ran away. After eating, they walked around the night market. Their bodies felt much warmer. He Yen and Xiao Ju walked to a corner. They noticed that there were many people in front of them. He Yen casually asked a young man beside him, "Excuse me, what's going on in front?" The young man glanced at He Yen and said, "They're guessing lantern riddles. Today is the last day. If you want to go, you can still make it. The more guesses you make, the more likely you are to win the most beautiful peacock lantern." Since they were here to visit the night market, they naturally wanted to join in the fun. He Yen held Xiao Ju's hand and squeezed into the crowd. After squeezing through the crowd, they saw a long corridor. There were all kinds of lanterns hanging from the eaves. Under the lanterns, there was a piece of paper with words written on it. It was the lantern riddles. Most of the people who came here were lovers. Some of them had already guessed a few lanterns. He Yen looked and was eager to try. He asked Xiao Ju, "Do you like any lantern? I'll help you win one." Xiao Ju looked down at her. "You'll help me? Of course. Isn't it your birthday today? I'll buy you whatever you want. Winning a lantern is nothing. After all, I studied at the Xianchang dojo." Xiao Ju smiled. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly heard someone call out to her from not far away. "Xiao Huaijin." He Yen turned his head to look and saw a pair of man and woman walking towards the 2 of them. It was actually Yan He and Xia Qingxiu. Today, both husband and wife were wearing goose yellow long gowns and skirts. At first glance, they looked very compatible. Yan He was still the same. He never looked at people in the eye. When he walked, his ponytail swung high. When he walked in front of them, without waiting for He Yen to speak, Yan He said to Xiao Ju, "Yo, a rare guest. I really didn't expect that one day I would be able to see Xiao Huaijin shopping in the night market." Compared to Yan He's rudeness, Xia Qingxiu was much gentler. He looked at He Yen and Xiao Ju and smiled. "Miss He, Military Governor Xiao." He Yen returned the greeting. "Miss Qingxiu." Yan He finally caught a glimpse of He Yen beside Xiao Ju. He sized up the 2 of them and revealed a disgusted expression. "Xiao Huaijin, don't tell me you're here to accompany this brat, this guy to the night market." He pretended to rub his arm, So disgusting, I have goosebumps all over my body. He Yen was speechless. Where did this person get the right to criticize others? Didn't he accompany his wife to the night market? Xia Qingxiu pulled Yen He. Yen He said, "What's wrong? I didn't say anything wrong." Sorry. Xia Qingxiu smiled at He Yen. Nan Guang is like this. He's just joking. He doesn't mean any harm. Miss He, are you here to guess riddles too? He Yen nodded. We happen to pass by here. Generals Yen, are you here to guess riddles too? I'm not guessing. Yen He said, I'm here to accompany Qingxiu. His gaze fell on Xiaoju. Xiao Huaiji knew, he's not guessing either. He's here to accompany me. He Yen quickly cut him off. Yen He was like a cockfight whenever he met Xiaoju. He had to compete to see who was better. If Xiaoju wanted to guess and aroused Yen He's competitive spirit, he wouldn't go to the night market tonight. He would just watch the two of them compete in riddles. He Yen decisively stopped him so that he could go to other places later. Sure. Yen He crossed his arms and said, then hurry up and guess. He Yen and Xia Qingxiu looked at each other. Xia Qingxiu smiled and took a piece of paper from the lantern in front of them. He Yen followed her movements and looked at the lantern beside him. The riddle was written very simply. Every mountain has the meaning of yearning. He Yen knew all the words, but he didn't know what they meant when they were connected. Xia Qingxiu had already taken the piece of paper and read it aloud, the meaning of parting with my husband. She thought for a while and looked at the shop owner. This has been? Miss, you have good eyesight. The craftsman who made the lantern smiled and gave Xia Qingxiu a wooden sign with a red stroke. It seemed that 10 strokes could be exchanged for one of the lanterns here. He Yen took a deep breath and felt that the lantern riddle he had chosen was not right. It would be better to change to a simpler one. As he thought about it, he walked to a lantern shaped like a lotus and picked up the note hanging below. Never winter and never summer. He Yen was speechless. What is this? She glanced sideways at Xiaoju. Xiaoju was standing not far away and looking at her calmly. He Yen didn't want to embarrass herself. She coughed lightly and walked to another spot. Lost Pavilion in Fog, Moon Maze Crossing. He Yen was confused. She was about to cry. Just now, she had praised herself and said that she had studied in the Virtuous Prosperity School. Now, she felt that it was better if she hadn't studied at all. What are these things? She could recognize the words, but she couldn't understand why they were put together. She looked at the girls who were guessing like fish in water. He Yen felt a headache coming on. She felt that even if she had encountered the most difficult battle, it would not be as difficult as this. She held the piece of paper in front of her and didn't know what to do. Suddenly, a voice came from behind her. Didn't you want to give me a lantern? Xiaoju had walked over and stood behind her. He Yen said, yes, for a while and didn't say anything else. He smiled. It seems that your poetry hasn't improved after all these years. Everyone has their own specialties. He Yen braced herself. I can't multitask. He seemed to chuckle, and the hot air he exhaled fell on He Yan's neck, tickling it. On the other side, Xia Qingxiu had finished guessing 10 riddles in the blink of an eye. The craftsman drew 10 ink characters on her wooden tablet and exchanged it for a jade rabbit lantern. He Yen held the lantern in his arms and said proudly to He Yen, why haven't you guessed it yet? Don't tell me you haven't studied before? Xiao Huaijin. He held Xia Qingxiu with one hand and even provoked Xiaoju. The wife you found is not as good as my wife. Was Yen He crazy? He Yen was speechless. He thought that since he couldn't beat Xiaoju in other aspects, he might as well compare with his wife, right? Who didn't have their strengths and weaknesses? How could he be so shallow? She was scolding He Yen in her heart when Xiaoju suddenly whispered in her ear, don't worry about him. Then, he stood behind her and picked up the paper riddles in front of He Yen. Xiaoju was very tall. When he took the paper from behind, he had to bend over slightly. From the eyes of others, it looked like he was holding He Yen in his arms. He Yen could almost feel the warmth from his back touching his chest. His ears turned red and he forgot to look at the note in front of him. Xiaoju had already opened his mouth and said, both places are vast and boundless. He Yen was stunned. The craftsman smiled and came over with a wooden tray. You guessed right. Xiao Huijin, you're cheating. Yen, he said angrily, how can you help her guess? What does it have to do with you? He Yen couldn't take it anymore and replied, if you don't want to, you can help me guess. Who wants to help you guess? Yen, he flung his sleeves. Let's go, I get annoyed when I see them. He pulled Xia Qingxiu's hand and walked away. At this moment, He Yen finally had time to focus on the riddles in front of her. She pulled the paper and read the words on it. Xiao Ju said the answer behind her. Since ancient times, too much love leads to regret. The heart is full of sorrow. Every 10, enter the top 3. Base. This person used to be the number 1 in the Xianchang house. When He Yen read the riddles, he didn't even need to think and directly said the answer. Xiao Ju's appearance was outstanding. She was smart and handsome. In this kind of situation, she was especially eye-catching. Not long after, the girls with lovers and without lovers all gathered in a circle. They either stared at Xiao Ju with infatuation or looked at He Yen with envy. When the 9 riddles were almost finished, He Yen picked up the note on the last lantern. 2 trees not in the forest, the field has a heart. After she finished reading, she didn't wait for Xiao Ju to speak and said, I know this, it's yearning. The craftsman laughed. Miss, you have a pure heart. He Yen blushed at this praise. She only guessed 1 out of 10 riddles. She really didn't deserve this praise. The one with a pure heart was the one behind her. The craftsman finished the last stroke on her wooden tablet and said to He Yen, Miss, go and pick a lantern you like. He Yen turned around and pulled Xiao Ju. How about it? I said I would give you a lantern, so I will definitely give it to you. Which one do you like? There were all kinds of lanterns hanging under the eaves. It was a dazzling array. He Yen pointed at a doublefish-shaped lantern. This doublefish lantern is quite nice. Do you like this one? Or this gourd lantern is also not bad. This lantern has a picture of a horse riding. From the beginning to the end, Xiao Ju only smiled faintly and let her be. He Yen saw a green gauze lantern on the side. It had a picture of a mountain and a pavilion. As the person walked, the light changed and the waterfall seemed to flow. It was very strange. This mountain and river lantern was among the other lanterns. At first glance, it looked inconspicuous, but in fact, there was a universe inside. He Yen was attracted at first glance. He thought that if he gave this lantern to Xiao Ju, it wouldn't be embarrassing. He said to the craftsman, I want this one. The craftsman was busy handing out wooden tablets to another pair of lovers. When he heard this, he said, Miss, you can take it yourself. He Yen said to Xiao Ju, wait, I will take the lantern for you. She walked to the mountain and river lantern. Just as she was about to take it down, she heard a familiar voice not far away. There is a lantern riddle up ahead. Do you want to take a look? Then a woman's voice sounded. Okay, I can buy one later and hang it in the courtyard. He Yen turned his head to look and saw a man and woman walking over a few steps in front of him. The man was handsome and elegant, and the woman was beautiful and charming. It was Su Zhiheng and He Xining. Su Zhiheng was holding He Xining's hand. The maidservant behind He Xining was holding a large pile of trinkets in her arms. They were probably rouge, face powder, and the like that she had casually bought in the night market. On the surface, the two of them looked like a perfect couple. Su Zhiheng smiled dotingly, and when he spoke, it was like a gentle breeze and drizzling rain. He Yen looked at them in a daze. She didn't know if she was mocking him or not. She originally thought that Su Zhiheng would only accompany He Wanru to the night market. Now, it seemed that as long as it wasn't her, he could accompany anyone. Miss. The craftsman saw her standing there in a daze and called out to her curiously. He Yen turned his head and was shocked. He subconsciously looked at Xiao Ju. He was also standing under the lantern. His figure was handsome, and his gaze was calm to the point of indifference. Chapter 227. He Yen didn't have time to speak before Xiao Ju glanced at her, turned around, and walked away. He Yen didn't have time to take down the lantern in front of him. He hurriedly pushed through the crowd and followed her. The craftsman behind her was stunned and called out to her, "Miss, you forgot to take your lantern." But there was no response. He Xining also heard the craftsman's call and subconsciously followed the craftsman's gaze. She saw a familiar figure hurriedly leaving. He Yen was startled. This figure looked exactly like Marquis Wuan, whom she had met at Yuhua Temple. She didn't know why, but she had only met He Yen once, but he left a deep impression on her. Su Zhiheng, who was beside her, asked her, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." He Xining returned to her senses. "Let's look at the lanterns." She was a little anxious. Ever since she married Su Zhiheng, whenever he had time, Su Zhiheng would accompany her to the night market. Recently, Su Zhiheng had been busy with official business and hadn't come over for 2 months. Yesterday, when she returned to the Su family, Su Zhiheng unexpectedly asked to accompany her for a while. If it was in the past, He Xining would have been very happy. But now, walking beside Su Zhiheng, she didn't feel happy. Instead, she felt a little nervous. Her mother's illness, the assassin that night, and the military book hidden under her dead sister's bedpost. Every one of these was enough to make people suspicious. But she couldn't do anything. She had to pretend that she didn't know anything. She stared at the colorful lanterns in front of her, but her mind was filled with thoughts of the figure who had hurriedly left just now. He Yen grabbed Xiao Ju's sleeve with difficulty and said, "Walk slowly. There are so many people here. If we get separated, it'll take a long time to find you. I was stepped on several times just now." He only walked forward and didn't look back, but his footsteps slowed down a little. Amidst the bustling crowd, He Yen used all the strength he could muster to grab onto Xiao Ju's sleeve, almost tearing it apart. Finally, they made it out of the crowd, to a place along the river. "Xiao Ju." He Yen stared at her and asked, "Are you angry?" Xiao Ju did not say anything. He tilted his head so He Yen couldn't see his expression clearly, so she stood on her tiptoes to get a closer look. However, Xiao Ju blocked him with her arm and pushed He Yen away. "Are you really angry?" He Yen said, "I was just—" "He Yen," Xiao Ju interrupted her. She looked straight at her and asked in a low voice, "Are you?" He Yen looked at him. "You still have feelings for Su Zhiheng?" Cough, cough, cough. She choked and coughed. "Don't joke around." He Yen denied, "It's not like you don't know what he did. How could I still have feelings for him?" He raised his eyebrows and looked at her sharply. "So you're saying that you had feelings in the past?" He Yen almost couldn't breathe. She was stunned by Xiao Ju's question. What kind of question was this? No matter how she answered, it seemed wrong. He Yen stammered for a while, then whispered, "I didn't have feelings in the past." Xiao Ju looked at her expressionlessly. He Yen felt guilty and carefully chose her words to lie. "You know, I didn't have the power to choose in my previous life. After I switched identities with He Rufei, I naturally had to follow whatever my family said. The He family arranged for me to marry Su Zhiheng, so I married him. I didn't have feelings for him." He Yen inexplicably felt guilty, as if her husband had found out about her adultery. She also had a headache. She had just looked at Su Zhiheng under the lanterns. Who knew that it would cause so much trouble? However, if she thought about it this way, it seemed that she was the one with a guilty conscience. After all, Xiao Ju had never had any other girls before her. "But I heard that when you married Su Zhiheng, you liked him very much." He looked at the river below the railings with a calm gaze. He Yen quivered. "Who said that? Who spread rumors about me behind my back? She deserves to be punished." Xiao Ju looked at her indifferently. He Yen froze for a moment and lowered her head. "Okay, when I didn't know that he was this kind of person, I liked him a little." She used her pinky and thumb to point. "Just a little. An ant is big. I can crush it with my foot." Xiao Ju was so angry that she laughed. She lazily said, "Then tell me, why do you like him? Even if you don't know what kind of person he is, your taste," she sized up He Yen, "is much lower than ordinary people." Was he scolding Su Zhiheng or himself? He Yen thought to himself. Normally, he didn't think that when the young master was angry, it was really hard to coax him. Why did he ask such an embarrassing question? It was tantamount to taking a knife and dismembering someone. However, the person in front of her was staring at her. His beautiful eyes were full of scrutiny. He Yen sighed. At that time, I just thought that this person was very good. Xiao Ju smiled mockingly. Do you remember that time when you secretly gave me a rabbit during the Eastern Mountain Hunt? He Yen asked. In order to make the emperor happy, the teachers in the Xianchang dojo put in all their effort to compete. They set a rule that if they didn't catch any prey, they couldn't eat and had to starve for an entire day. Now that He Yen thought about it, she still felt indignant. The person who set this rule was simply sick. Even prisoners on death row were given a full meal. Just because they didn't catch any prey, they made such an inhumane punishment. Although you gave me a rabbit that day, I let it go. I didn't catch any prey. If it was summer, it would be fine. However, the feeling of starving on a snowy day was really unbearable. When the hunt was over, He Yen looked at the youths around her who were returning from a rewarding journey in 2s and 3s. Her heart was extremely uncomfortable. That was when she met Su Zhiheng. At that time, Su Zhiheng was only a 15-16-year-old youth. He was dressed in black and looked handsome and gentle. He Yen walked to the place where she put her bundle with an empty stomach. The snow on the ground was very deep. She went to the hunting ground in the morning and didn't come out until the sky was dark. She was really weak. She didn't pay attention to a piece of shirt buried in the snow. She accidentally kicked it and fell. Half of her body fell into the snow and she didn't get up for a long time. Just as she was flopping around in the snow, she suddenly heard a voice in front of her. Are you okay? He Yen raised his head and saw a young man in green robes. This youth looked unfamiliar. He shouldn't be a student of the Xianchang Gymnasium. However, today's hunt in the mountain was also attended by students from other gymnasiums. She guessed that he was a student from another gymnasium. He Yen was still in a daze. That youth actually smiled. He directly reached out and grabbed her hand, saying, "Let me help you." He pulled her up from the snow. She was still wearing the mask on her face. The mask was cold, but the youth's hand was very warm. My name is Su Zhiheng. Brother, are you a member of the Xianchang Gymnasium? He Yen randomly nodded her head. I heard that the rules of the Xianchang Gymnasium are very strict. If you don't catch any prey today, you'll have to starve. Su Zhiheng looked at her empty hands. It's a pity that I didn't go hunting. Otherwise, I could give you one of the prey. In the Xianchang Gymnasium, she could be considered a loner. She didn't have many friends. Because of her mask, other people also felt that she was quite unsociable. They were too lazy to approach her. This was the first time they met such a warm-hearted person. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Are you going over there to get your bundle? Su Zhiheng asked. How about I help you? You can't even walk. He Yen was about to say that there was no need, but as soon as she lifted her foot, she felt a severe pain in her ankle. It seemed that she had just twisted it. Thinking of this, she slightly nodded her head towards the youth and blushed. Thank you very much. She then pointed at the red bundle. That's mine. Su Zhiheng then turned around and went to the high platform to help He Yen get her bundle. After he retrieved the bundle, he handed it to He Yen. He then supported her all the way to the carriage where the students of the Xianchang Gymnasium were sitting before leaving. At that time, He Yen looked at Su Zhiheng's back and felt that this youth was really warm and considerate. When she returned to the Xianchang Gymnasium, sure enough, she didn't have anything to eat that day. He Yen hid in the room alone and poured herself some hot tea. The more she drank, the hungrier she felt. Her stomach rumbled incessantly. But what could she do? The rules of the Xianchang Gymnasium were the strictest. Moreover, she really didn't hunt anything. If she really wanted to go, she wouldn't be able to bring herself to do it. After sitting for a while, He Yen helplessly sighed. She took the bundle and prepared to put away the paper and brush she had brought during the day. As soon as she opened the bundle, 2 glistening yellow loquats rolled out from inside. How could there be loquats at this time of the year? He Yen stared blankly for a moment. She subconsciously picked up the loquats. The loquats were big and heavy. She could faintly smell their fragrance. This bundle had always been placed on the high platform. During the group hunt, the students only brought quivers and arrows for the sake of convenience. After thinking about it, the only person who had touched this bundle was that black-clothed youth called Su Jiheng. She peeled off the loquat and took a small bite. The fruit was sweet. When she thought about that youth's face and smile, she felt that her luck today wasn't too bad. A few years later, when He Yen returned from the battlefield and exchanged identities with He Rufei, Madam, he told her that she had arranged a marriage for her. The other party's name was Su Jiheng. In addition to being astonished, He Yen also felt a trace of joy. The marriage of the He family's women had always been to pave the way for the men. Compared to marrying a stranger she had never met before, marrying Su Jiheng was clearly the best choice she had. Regardless of how outsiders praised Su Jiheng for being young and promising, in He Yan's heart, she only felt that the 10-year-old Su Jiheng was able to take care of someone he had met by chance. He was definitely a good person. At that time, she actually had a lot of expectations for this marriage. Later on, even though Su Jiheng favored He Wanru and He Wanru had always flaunted in front of her, He Yen still had some fantasies about Su Jiheng because of the 2 loquats he had in his youth. Until he became blind, until Su Jiheng personally broke this fantasy bit by bit. So, Xiaoju said playfully, you like him because of those loquats? You can say that. He Yen said, I just feel that he can take care of other people's feelings and see through other people's difficult situations. At least he's a good person. You really like him so casually. Xiaoju sneered and walked forward. After taking 2 steps, she stopped and said coldly, those 2 loquats were given by me. He Yen was stunned. He had already continued to walk towards the river. He Yen was stunned for a moment, then caught up with him in a few steps and grabbed his sleeve. How is that possible? You're lying to me, right? Xiaoju lowered his head and looked at her with a calm gaze. That year, when Lin Shuanghe had proposed to give He Yen a rabbit, he couldn't help but shoot one. He Yen, however, had set the rabbit free. Because he remembered his own experiences in the mountains when he was young, he began to treat this boy who didn't seem to have any strong points in a different light. He also knew that the students who didn't manage to hunt today would starve when they returned to the Xianchang Hall. As the winner of this group hunt, Xiaoju received a lot of rewards. The people in the palace even gave him food, and there were 2 loquats in it. At this time of the year, loquats weren't available everywhere. He originally didn't have much interest in this sweet fruit. When he was leaving, he passed by the high platform and caught a glimpse of a red bundle in the corner. He vaguely remembered that this bundle seemed to belong to He Rufei. That boy didn't manage to hunt anything today. When he returned, he would starve for the night. It was also winter, so he was afraid that it would be difficult for him to endure. He looked at the imperial food basket in his hand and thought of the first time he met He Rufei. He saw this guy standing under the loquat tree in the Xianchang Hall, jumping up and down with all his might, trying to pick loquats. It was extremely comical. After thinking about it, he stopped and took out the 2 loquats from the basket and stuffed them into the red bundle. He Yen stuttered, It can't be? You really gave them to him? Xiaoju quietly looked at him. He Yen thought to himself, this is the end. This is like Xiaoju doing something good, but Su Jiheng intercepted it. It was a freak combination of factors. How could he be happy? But at this critical juncture, how could he calm his anger? Today is your birthday, and I forgot to take the lamp just now. What do you want as a congratulatory gift? She awkwardly changed the topic. Then, she caught a glimpse of someone selling tonghalu on the opposite side of the street. She said, wait here. She rushed over and bought a tonghalu. Then, she ran back and handed it to Xiaoju. Xiaoju turned his head. He was probably really angry. He Yen was in a difficult position. There was no way to undo the past. She did have feelings for Su Jiheng and married Su Jiheng, but Xiaoju didn't. She had never experienced what Xiaoju was feeling at this moment, but she knew that it wasn't a good feeling. He Yen walked around him. Xiaoju, Xiaoju? Xiaoju avoided her gaze and only looked at the flowing river under the railings. She didn't know when it started snowing, but the snowflakes fell on her body. He Yen finally felt cold when she was far away from the crowd in the night market. She suddenly remembered what Qing Mei said to her before she left. He Yen glanced at Xiaoju, but he still didn't look at her. She sneezed exaggeratedly and said to herself, "It's so cold." The next moment she felt warmth from the sky. Xiaoju turned around and took off his cloak to cover her. He was finally willing to turn around and look at her. He Yen quickly took advantage of the situation and threw herself in front of him. "You're not angry anymore?" Xiaoju helped her tie the rope in front of the cloak, but he still didn't look at her. Xiaoju's cloak was very big, almost covering He Yan's entire body. He Yan was afraid that Xiaoju would be cold, so he leaned very close to Xiaoju. Just like that night when he was drunk, he was almost sticking to him. She looked up and teased Xiaoju, "Commander Xiao, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have mistaken you for someone else. Today is your birthday. Don't be angry. Smile? If you don't want to smile, have a bite of candied fruit." She raised the candied fruit to Xiaoju's lips. Suddenly, her hand was grabbed. He Yen was startled. She subconsciously raised her head and met his shimmering black eyes. The young man's facial features were no longer as delicate as they were when he was young. Like the moonlight on a snowy mountain, his facial features were clear and clean, and he was beautiful and flawless. He held He Yen with one hand and pulled her into his embrace. He leaned over and kissed her. "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.